It wasn't the stars that caught his attention, nor the vastness of space. Those things had been seen by every species who dared leave their homeworld. What kept the gathered council members leaning forward was the human silence. The one who represented an entire race of beings stood there, his hands behind his back, eyes scanning the assembly. He hadn't spoken a word yet. "Well?" prompted Chairman Carlex, her fronds shivering in what could only be impatience. "We've made our assessment. Your people do not possess the readiness for what's coming. We've studied you. Violence, unpredictability, war. You have feared it for too long." The human smiled faintly. It wasn't the kind of smile Carlex had expected. It didn't show appeasement or compliance. It was old, weary. It belonged to a race that had been through something worse than fear. "You're right," the human finally said, his voice softer than expected. Yet it echoed in the hall as if each syllable carried something far older. "We are afraid of war." He let the statement linger. Some council members exchanged glances, unsure how to proceed. They had anticipated bluster, or at the very least, defiance. They hadn't anticipated agreement. "War is a terrible thing," the human continued, pacing slowly, hands still clasped behind him. His gaze drifted to the ceiling, as if looking past it, to some distant memory. "We have tried to run from it. We've written laws, treaties, built monuments to peace. But war doesn't leave us." One of the alien ambassadors, a lizard-skinned Zetau, hissed. "Do you not think we know this already? Do you believe yourselves unique? Every species knows war." The human stopped walking, turning to face the speaker, his smile fading into something grimmer. "Not like us," he said softly. The silence was immediate, hanging heavily over the chamber. There was a tension now, something unspoken beginning to reveal itself in the human's eyes. "War isn't just violence," the human said, stepping toward the center of the room now. "It's what comes after. When your worlds lie broken, and your people are hollowed out from the inside. When you don't remember what you fought for in the first place. When you rebuild, knowing it will happen again. It's living with the knowledge that survival doesn't mean victory. It means endurance." Chairman Carlex shifted uncomfortably. This was not the reaction they'd expected. This wasn't a speech, it was something darker, more personal. "Every council member here has seen battle in some form," she said, her voice a calculated attempt at diplomacy, though the undertone was sharp. "Do not think we underestimate the toll it takes. But that is why we convene, to prevent." "Prevent?" The human interrupted, his voice growing firmer now, a sharp contrast to the calm before. "You think you can prevent war?" He scanned the room, eyes resting on each species for a brief moment. There were hundreds, different faces, bodies, expressions, but none of them could meet his gaze. "You can regulate trade routes, mediate political tensions, dictate borders. But when true war comes, none of that matters. None of your treaties will hold." Carlex's fronds trembled again. "We have the best technologies and strategies. We have planned for every possibility." The human's laugh was low, almost a chuckle, though there was no humor in it. "Strategies?" he repeated. "Yes, you have plans, but plans break." He stepped closer, and now the air seemed heavier. The weight of history, of countless battles, seemed to settle over the room. His voice grew colder, no longer the soft-spoken diplomat, but something else entirely, something hardened by time. "You think you know war because you've seen a few battles? You've lost soldiers, planets, maybe even entire systems? That's not war. That's skirmishes. You've never felt war the way we have, when it changes you. When it strips away your identity and replaces it with survival instincts you never knew you had." Carlex opened her mouth to respond, but the human raised a hand, silencing her. "War isn't just about who has the bigger fleet or the smarter strategy. War breaks you, makes you something else. It twists your soul, bends your morality until you no longer recognize yourself. That's what we fear. Not the battles, not the deaths, but the aftermath." The room was silent again. For the first time, many of the council members looked at the human differently. They had always seen humanity as newcomers to the galaxy, a fledgling species, still figuring out their place. But this was something else. A flicker of doubt crept into Carlex's mind. Maybe this human was right. Maybe there was something about humanity they didn't understand. The human stepped back, his eyes losing some of their intensity, though the darkness still lingered. "You think you can control it," he said quietly, almost to himself. "But war doesn't let itself be controlled, and when it comes for you, you'll wish you had never asked us to help." Carlex leaned forward, her fronds twitching with an emotion that was difficult to place. Fear, perhaps, or maybe just uncertainty. "And what would you suggest we do, then?" she asked, her voice softer now, almost as if she were asking for his help. The human smiled again, though this time it was filled with a sad kind of understanding. "Do what you must," he said, turning to leave. "But remember, when the real war starts, when you've run out of plans and strategies, and when you can't tell the difference between your enemy and yourself, we'll be there." He paused at the doorway, looking back one last time. "And you'll wish you had listened." Without another word, he left the chamber, the door closing behind him with a soft hiss. For a long time, no one spoke. The door closed, and the heavy silence in the chamber was almost suffocating. Carlex sat motionless, her fronds no longer twitching in impatience, but hanging limp in the stillness. The other council members were just as quiet, their eyes fixed on the spot where the human had stood moments ago. "He knows something we don't," whispered one of the ambassadors, a sleek figure with silver skin and elongated limbs. His voice trembled slightly, betraying the nervousness none of them had expected to feel. Carlex didn't respond immediately. She could feel the weight of the human's words pressing down on her. There was something about the way he had spoken, his tone, the dark certainty in his eyes, that made her reconsider everything they had assumed about this species. "Humanity," she murmured, as if trying to piece together the puzzle in her mind. "They've always been outsiders. Too emotional, too unpredictable. But this feels different." "Different how?" asked the Zetal ambassador from his position further down the table. His forked tongue flicked out nervously, tasting the air. Carlex hesitated. She couldn't quite articulate what had changed in her perception, but the image of the human's face lingered in her mind. There had been something ancient in his gaze, something that spoke of deep wounds that time hadn't healed. It was a gaze she had only ever seen in survivors of extinction-level conflicts, and even then, not quite like this. "The humans have always been reluctant to engage in large-scale warfare," she said finally. "We assumed it was weakness. Fear." "Was it not?" asked another ambassador, her three eyes narrowing as she watched Carlex. Carlex shook her head, slowly. I think we've misunderstood them. They're not afraid of war because they are weak. They fear it because they know it too well, perhaps better than any of us." The Zetal ambassador hissed softly, his eyes flashing with annoyance. "You speak as if they hold some secret knowledge. Do not let their theatrics fool you. We have faced wars, we have conquered threats far worse than they could imagine." Carlex turned to face him, her expression unreadable. "That's precisely what worries me. They didn't boast. They didn't threaten in the way we would expect. Instead, they warned us, almost as if they know something we don't." The silver-skinned ambassador leaned forward, his voice more urgent now. "Are you suggesting that they might have faced something worse than any of us? Some kind of war beyond what we can imagine?" Carlex didn't answer immediately. She stared at the polished surface of the table in front of her, thinking. There was too much they didn't know about humanity's history. When they had joined the Galactic Council, they had been guarded about certain aspects of their past, especially regarding their military history. The records they had shared spoke of planetary conflicts, skirmishes over resources, and the like, things every species experienced at some point in their evolution. But there were gaps, long stretches of time unaccounted for in their historical archives. And now, after hearing the humans speak, Carlex was starting to wonder what those gaps hid. "We need to investigate this further," she said, her voice firm. "We need to understand what we're dealing with." One of the other ambassadors, A stout figure with hardened, stone-like skin grunted. "And how do you suggest we do that? Ask them to share their darkest secrets with us. They've already made it clear they won't reveal more than they think is necessary." Karlex frowned. He was right. The humans were an enigma, and prying answers from them would not be easy. But there had to be a way. "We'll need to approach this delicately," she said, after a moment of thought. "We'll continue with the alliance, but we must observe them more closely. Monitor their movements, their communications, their interactions, and if necessary, infiltrate their networks." The Zetal ambassador let out a soft hiss of approval. "Yes, we should know what we are aligning ourselves with. For all we know, they could be planning something behind our backs." Karlex raised a hand to stop him. "I don't believe they're planning anything against us, not yet. But we need to understand what drives them. What kind of war could make an entire species afraid of it, even when they clearly have the strength to fight?" The silver-skinned ambassador nodded in agreement. "We need more information, and quickly. If war is coming, and if the humans know more than they are letting on, then we must be prepared." Karlex stood from her seat, her fronds swaying gently. "Then we have no time to waste. Begin covert surveillance on all human military movements. I want to know everything, every ship deployment, every communication between their leaders. We cannot afford to be blind in this." The council members murmured their agreement and quickly began to disperse, their minds now focused on the silent, yet growing threat. As Karlex made her way to her personal quarters, her mind raced. She had always been a leader who valued caution, who believed that knowledge was power. And right now, humanity held knowledge that the rest of the galaxy didn't. Whatever war they had endured in their past, it had shaped them into something more dangerous than anyone had realized. Karlex entered her quarters and sat in silence, staring at the projection of distant stars outside her window. What had the humans truly seen? What kind of war could leave scars so deep that even after joining a galactic alliance, they remained haunted by it? She would find out. She had to. On the far side of the galaxy, aboard the UN's Resolute, Captain Marin stared at the encrypted message on his terminal. It had come from Earth's Central Command, marked with the highest level of clearance. His brow furrowed as he read the contents. The Galactic Council had begun monitoring human movements. They were nervous, paranoid even. That much was clear. "What are they looking for?" Marin muttered to himself, leaning back in his chair. "What do they think we're hiding?" He closed the message, his mind returning to the conversation he'd had with Central Command months ago. The one where they discussed how much of humanity's past should be revealed to the Council and how much should remain buried. Marin knew the truth, and so did a select few others. War wasn't what the Council thought it was, and if they ever found out what humanity had truly been through, they would understand why the galaxy was never really ready for them. Standing up from his chair, Marin walked to the viewport, staring out into the endless void of space. Somewhere out there, old enemies stirred. Enemies humanity had fought long before the Council had ever known they existed. He could feel it. War was coming. And this time, humanity wouldn't be the ones caught unprepared. The deck of the Resolute hummed with quiet activity as Captain Marin stepped away from the viewport. He crossed the command center, his boots making soft, deliberate clicks against the metallic floor. His officers worked in silence, each one engrossed in their respective tasks, monitoring the ship's systems and scanning the stars for any signs of movement. Yet there was a tension in the air, a shared unease they all felt but didn't speak aloud. "Lieutenant Griggs," Marin called as he approached his second-in-command. Griggs, a tall man with close-cropped hair and a sharp, analytical gaze, looked up from his console. "Sir?" "Pull up our current patrol route. I want to make some adjustments," Marin said, his tone calm but firm. Griggs hesitated for a moment, then quickly complied. He tapped a series of commands into the terminal, and the ship's current course appeared on the central holoprojector, an elegant arc through the outer edges of Council space, far from the core worlds and major traffic lanes. "Captain, our orders from Central Command were explicit. We're to maintain this course for the next 3 days before rendezvousing with the rest of the fleet at Sunder Station, Griggs said cautiously. Marin waved a hand dismissively. I'm aware of our orders, but circumstances have changed. He leaned over the holoprojector, studying the star map for a moment before speaking again. Set a course for the Trion cluster. It's farther out than our current patrol route, but I have a feeling we'll find something interesting there. Griggs raised an eyebrow. The Trion cluster? That's deep space. No known colonies or major outposts. Are you expecting trouble out there? Marin's eyes flicked up to meet Griggs. I don't know yet, but I've got a hunch. And right now, that's enough. Griggs hesitated again, but nodded, entering the new coordinates into the navigation system. The ship's engines hummed to life, and the Resolute slowly veered off its original course, heading toward the remote and desolate region of space known as the Trion cluster. As the ship adjusted its trajectory, Marin couldn't shake the feeling that the Council's sudden interest in humanity's movements wasn't the only threat looming on the horizon. Something else was out there, something old, and he intended to find it before it found them. Meanwhile, on the Council's homeworld of Drathis Prime, Karlex stood on the balcony of her residence, gazing out at the vast sprawl of the city below. The brilliant lights of the capital stretched far into the distance, a testament to the unity and peace the Galactic Council had strived to maintain for centuries. But tonight, the peace felt fragile. She could feel it slipping away, like sand through her fingers. A soft chime interrupted her thoughts, and Karlex turned to see her personal communications console light up. She tapped the control panel, and a holographic display flickered to life. The face of the Zetal ambassador, Threx, appeared before her. His reptilian features were sharp, his eyes glinting with thinly veiled anxiety. Karlex, Threx hissed, his forked tongue flicking out briefly. I trust you've heard the latest reports from the outer sectors. Karlex nodded, though she kept her expression neutral. I've heard, but the reports are inconclusive. There's no need to jump to conclusions. Threx narrowed his eyes. Inconclusive, perhaps, but disturbing nonetheless. Several of our patrol ships have gone missing near the Trion cluster, and our scouts have detected strange energy signatures in the region. Energy that doesn't match any known species technology. Karlex felt a chill run down her spine. The Trion cluster again. She had thought it was a coincidence when Captain Marin had set a course for that region, but now it seemed too much of a coincidence to ignore. And you believe this is related to humanity? Karlex asked, her voice carefully measured. Threx hissed softly, his agitation evident. I don't know, but the humans are moving toward the cluster as we speak. Their ship, the Resolute, altered its course earlier today. They know something, Karlex. Something they aren't telling us. Karlex turned away from the holographic display, her mind racing. She had already ordered the covert surveillance of human activities, but if they were moving toward the Trion cluster, then time was running out. Keep monitoring their movements, she said finally. But don't confront them yet. We need more information before we act. Threx's eyes flashed with frustration, but he bowed his head slightly. As you wished, Counselor, but I fear waiting too long will cost us dearly. As the hologram faded, Karlex stared out into the night once more. The humans were on the move, and whatever they were heading toward, she had the sinking feeling it was something far more dangerous than anyone in the galaxy had anticipated. On board the Resolute, Captain Marin paced the bridge as the ship approached the edge of the Trion cluster. The viewscreen was filled with the swirling, dense nebula that surrounded the region, its vibrant colors masking the unknown dangers that lay within. Approaching the Trion cluster, Captain, Griggs reported. We're picking up faint energy readings, but nothing definitive. Marin nodded, his eyes fixed on the swirling nebula. Maintain course. We're getting close. They all knew this wasn't just a routine patrol. Something was out here, and whatever it was, it had the potential to change everything. Suddenly, the ship's sensors flared to life. An alert echoed through the command center, and Griggs' fingers flew across his console as he pulled up the readings. "Captain, we've got something. Large, unidentified structure ahead. It's not on any known charts." Marin's heart skipped a beat. On screen. The view screen flickered, and the image that appeared sent a ripple of shock through the crew. Ahead of them, partially obscured by the nebula, was a massive, ancient structure. It floated in the void like a relic from a long-forgotten age, its dark surface etched with strange, alien markings. "What is that?" Griggs whispered, his voice barely audible. Marin stared at the structure, a deep sense of foreboding settling over him. "I don't know," he said quietly, "but I think we're about to find out." The Resolute slowed as it neared the structure, its powerful lights illuminating the surface. The markings on the structure seemed to pulse faintly, as if responding to the ship's presence. Marin could feel the weight of history in the air, the sense that this place had witnessed things far beyond their understanding. "Prepare a boarding team," Marin ordered, his voice steady despite the unease gnawing at him. "We're going in." Griggs turned to him, his expression conflicted. "Captain, are you sure that's a good idea? We don't know what we're dealing with here." Marin met his gaze. "That's exactly why we need to go. Whatever this is, it's been hidden out here for a reason, and I want to know what that reason is." Griggs hesitated, but nodded, moving to relay the orders to the crew. As the preparations were made, Marin stood by the viewscreen, his eyes locked on the mysterious structure. Whatever secrets lay within, they were about to uncover them. And the galaxy would never be the same. The docking bay hummed with the soft whine of hydraulic presses as the boarding shuttle prepared for launch. The interior lights of the Resolute's hangar cast long shadows across the figures assembling in their black and gray suits. Marin stood among them, hands clasped behind his back, his mind racing through the preparations one last time. He knew his orders were straightforward: investigate the structure and retrieve any data they could find. But the silence of the Trion cluster, the stillness of that ancient, looming relic, weighed heavily on him. "Captain, boarding party's ready," Lieutenant Griggs said, approaching with his helmet under one arm, his expression unreadable. Marin nodded, his gaze lingering on the ship. "You've read the scans?" "Yes, sir," Griggs replied, but he didn't sound convinced. "The structure's completely dormant. No active defenses, no transmission, just nothing." Marin turned, facing him fully. "That worries you." "It should worry all of us," Griggs said, his voice low. "Something that old, floating in deep space, untouched for millennia. There's a reason nobody's found it until now. Things don't just sit in the void for that long without some kind of catch." Marin studied him for a moment, reading the tension in Griggs' shoulders, the subtle tightness around his eyes. Griggs had always been the cautious one, the officer who played by the book. But beneath the surface, Marin sensed a deeper fear, the same unspoken dread that had gnawed at him since they'd first laid eyes on the structure. "I know," Marin said quietly, "but we don't have a choice. Command wants answers, and right now, so do I." Griggs hesitated, then nodded, putting on his helmet. "Aye, sir. I just hope we're ready for whatever's in there." As the boarding party filed into the shuttle, Marin couldn't shake the uneasy thought that maybe Griggs was right. But he pushed it aside, focusing on the task at hand. His crew trusted him to lead, and he needed to stay sharp. Inside the shuttle, the team strapped in, the hum of the engines vibrating through the deck. They lifted off smoothly, gliding through the Resolute's atmospheric shields and into the cold expanse of space. The ancient structure loomed ahead, larger now, its shadow swallowing the stars behind it. "Bring us in slow," Marin ordered, his eyes fixed on the dark surface ahead. The shuttle eased forward, edging closer to what appeared to be a docking port. The structure's metal gleamed dully in the shuttle's lights, covered in layers of dust and debris from ages of disuse. Marin's eyes traced the strange markings along its surface, alien symbols that felt ancient yet oddly familiar. "What do you make of these markings?" Marin asked aloud, more to himself than anyone in particular. Ensign Malik, the youngest of the group and their resident xenolinguist, leaned forward to get a better look through the shuttle's viewport. It's difficult to say. The language looks similar to several ancient dialects we've encountered before, but there are deviations. It's almost as if it predates the known galactic languages by thousands of years. Predates? Marin frowned. You mean this could be older than even the first council species? Malik nodded. It's possible. This structure could be a relic of an extinct civilization, something we've never seen before. Griggs shot a glance at Marin, his face tight behind his helmet's visor. Captain, if it's that old, we could be walking into a tomb. Or worse. We'll proceed with caution, Marin said firmly. But we need to understand what we're dealing with. If this really is something ancient, it could hold answers to questions we haven't even thought to ask. The shuttle latched onto the docking port with a soft thud, the magnetic locks engaging. The airlock cycled, and a hiss of depressurization echoed through the cabin. Marin stood, grabbing his helmet. As he secured it, he caught a glimpse of his reflection in the shuttle's glass panel, his face lined with the weight of responsibility, the years of command showing in his eyes. He wasn't just walking into a mystery, he was leading his crew into something unknown, something that could reshape their understanding of the galaxy itself. "Let's move," he ordered, his voice calm but firm. The hatch opened, revealing the dark interior of the structure. A faint mist clung to the floor, illuminated by the harsh beams of their helmet lights. The air inside was stale, unmoving, as if the structure had been sealed for centuries. As they stepped through the threshold, the metallic echo of their boots reverberated down the long, empty corridor. The walls were lined with more of the alien symbols, etched deep into the surface. There were no signs of life, no bodies or remnants of any kind, just silence. "Malik, you're up," Marin said, signaling the young ensign to scan the area. Malik moved to one of the walls, pulling out a handheld scanner. "These symbols, they're repeating in a pattern. It's almost like a code, but the meaning isn't clear yet." "Keep at it," Marin said. "Griggs, stay close. I don't want anyone getting separated." They moved deeper into the structure, the corridors widening as they progressed. The architecture was unlike anything Marin had ever seen, angular, yet flowing, as if the builders had a completely different understanding of spatial dynamics. It wasn't just alien, it felt purposeful, as though every detail had been designed with a specific intent, one they couldn't yet grasp. Suddenly, Malik's scanner beeped loudly, startling the group. He knelt by one of the walls, his brow furrowed in concentration. "Captain, you need to see this," he said, his voice tense. Marin approached, peering over Malik's shoulder. On the scanner's display was an energy signature, a faint, pulsing source located deep within the structure. "Looks like we're not alone after all," Griggs muttered. "It's coming from the core of the structure," Malik continued. "Whatever it is, it's still active, and it's old, very old." Marin felt a knot form in his stomach. "Do we have any readings on what it could be?" "Not yet," Malik said, shaking his head. "The energy signature is unlike anything I've seen before, but it's stable, at least for now." Marin straightened, his mind racing. There was no turning back now. They had come too far, and whatever was at the heart of this structure could hold the key to understanding its purpose and potentially the threat it posed. "We keep moving," Marin said, his voice steady despite the growing tension. "But everyone stays alert. We don't know what we're walking into." They continued down the winding corridors, the walls narrowing and shifting as if the structure itself were alive, subtly guiding them toward its center. The air grew colder, the mist thicker, clinging to their suits like a second skin. As they neared the core, Marin's thoughts drifted to the nature of war, what it demanded of people, how it shaped them. In the silence of the alien tomb, he couldn't help but think about the decisions he had made, the sacrifices his crew had endured, all in the name of survival. The galaxy's conflicts were never-ending, and humanity had been thrust into the center of it, forced to adapt or perish. Yet here, in the quiet expanse of this ancient relic, those wars seemed so far away, distant echoes of a younger species trying to find its place among the stars. The door to the core chamber loomed ahead, larger and more intricately designed than any they had encountered so far. Strange symbols lined its surface, glowing faintly with the same energy that pulsed from within. "Captain," Griggs said, his voice barely a whisper, "are we sure about this?" Marin didn't answer right away. He stepped forward, placing a hand on the door's cold surface. There was a weight to it, as though it held the secrets of an entire civilization. Perhaps it did. Perhaps it held more than that, more than they were prepared to face. But there was no turning back now. "We're about to find out," Marin said, his voice calm but resolute. With a deep breath, he pressed a control on his wrist panel. The door rumbled, groaning as ancient mechanisms stirred to life. Slowly, it slid open, revealing the core of the structure. The chamber beyond was vast, its ceiling disappearing into darkness. At the center of the room stood a massive, pulsating object, an obelisk of sorts, its surface shimmering with a faint, ethereal light. The energy pulsed rhythmically, like the heartbeat of something ancient and powerful. Malik's scanner went wild, picking up readings that made no sense. "Captain, this isn't just a power source. This is something else." Marin stepped forward, his eyes locked on the obelisk. He could feel the weight of its presence, the sheer age of it pressing down on him. This was no ordinary relic. This was a remnant of something far older, far greater than anything they had encountered before. "Malik," Marin said slowly, "can you access it?" I'm not sure," Malik stammered. "It's like it's alive, but not in a biological sense. I don't know how to explain it. It's as if the structure itself is aware of us." The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. "Griggs, keep an eye on the perimeter," Marin ordered. "We're not taking any chances." Griggs nodded, his hand hovering near his weapon. "Start a deep scan," Marin said, his eyes never leaving the obelisk. "We need to know what we're dealing with, and fast." As Malik worked, Marin stood there, staring at the ancient structure before him. He could feel something stirring, deep within the obelisk, as if it was reaching out to them, waiting. Waiting for what, though, he couldn't say. But he knew one thing for sure: whatever they had found here, it was going to change everything. The Resolute floated in the silent expanse, tethered to a relic of an age that no one in the known galaxy could recall. Marin stood at the core of that ancient structure, staring at the obelisk before him, feeling the sheer weight of its presence. Whatever this thing was, it had existed long before humanity had learned to walk, before the Galactic Council had first convened, and before war had turned into a universal language. There was something profoundly humbling about standing in its shadow. Marin had fought battles across systems, seen what war did to people. Yet here, he felt small, no, not insignificant, but aware of his place in a larger, unknowable picture. The obelisk's soft glow bathed the room in a strange, ethereal light, casting shadows that seemed to dance with a rhythm all their own. Malik's hands moved deftly over the scanner, his brow furrowed in concentration. Griggs stood nearby, tense but watchful, his unease clear. Even in silence, the room was loud with anticipation. No one knew what this structure was or what the obelisk contained, but it felt alive, if not in the biological sense, then certainly in a way that suggested it was aware. Its stillness wasn't dead, it was waiting. "Captain," Malik murmured, his eyes darting between the scanner and the obelisk. "I'm getting something, but it's not what I expected." "What is it?" Marin asked, his voice steady, though his curiosity surged. "There's data in here, stored deep within the structure," Malik replied, his voice low, almost reverent. "But it's not like anything we've ever encountered before. It's not just information, it's like it's encoded into the structure itself. Every inch of this place, every symbol, every wall, it's part of a larger design. It's not just a building, Captain. This whole place might be a machine." Marin's mind raced. A machine. But for what purpose? What could have been so important that a civilization would create something this vast and hide it in the depths of space? "What do you mean? A machine?" Griggs asked, the tension in his voice clear. "Like some kind of weapon." "I don't know yet," Malik admitted, his hands still moving over the scanner. But it's like this structure is more than just a tomb. It's active. Somehow, there's a process happening, something old but still functioning. A chill ran through Marin, but he kept his voice calm. Can we access it? Get a better read on what's happening here? Malik hesitated. Maybe, but I don't know if we should. Griggs stepped forward, his expression hard. Why not? Isn't that the whole point of this mission? To figure out what this thing is. It is, Malik said quickly, but I'm not sure if we're ready for what we'll find. This isn't just some ancient artifact. It's alive in a way we don't understand. If we push too far, we could trigger something we're not equipped to handle. The room fell silent as the weight of Malik's words settled over them. Marin understood his caution, but there was also a need to know, to understand. Whatever this structure was, it had been built for a reason, and in the galaxy, every reason, no matter how far removed, tied back to survival. The obelisk could contain answers not just about the ancient builders, but about the nature of life in the universe itself. Keep working, Marin said quietly. But take it slow. We'll move forward cautiously. Griggs exhaled sharply, a sign that he was holding back more than he was willing to say. Marin glanced at him, noting the subtle shift in his stance. Griggs was a soldier, through and through. He wasn't built for mysteries or ancient relics. He wanted to know who the enemy was, where they were hiding, and what needed to be done to defeat them. But here, there was no enemy in sight, no obvious danger to counteract. It made men like Griggs nervous. Still, Marin couldn't shake the feeling that the obelisk was more than it appeared. As they stood there, watching it pulse faintly, he felt as if it were watching them in return, observing their reactions, measuring their choices. There was intelligence here, whether built into the machine or left behind by the creators. It was hard to tell, but it was undeniable. What are we not seeing? Marin thought aloud, letting the words slip out. The question wasn't just for his team, but for himself, too. They were standing in the heart of something that had outlasted countless generations, something that had endured while civilizations rose and fell. Malik, still focused on his scanner, seemed to hear the question. I think the answer might be in the symbols, he said. They're not just decoration. They're part of the coding. I've been running them through translation algorithms, but nothing we have can fully decode them. It's like they're written in layers, each symbol holding multiple meanings depending on context. Marin frowned. Meaning it was designed for a specific audience, someone who could understand those layers. Exactly, Malik nodded. We're just scratching the surface. Whoever built this, they thought in ways we can't fully grasp. Can we learn their language? Marin asked. It's possible, Malik replied, but it would take time. Years, maybe decades. It's not just a matter of translating the words. They represent concepts that don't have direct counterparts in our languages. It's like trying to explain color to someone who's never had sight. Marin's mind whirled with possibilities. The builders of this structure had encoded their knowledge, their history, their intent into the very fabric of the walls around them. But what was it they wanted to communicate? Was this place a message for those who came after them, or was it a warning? As Malik continued his work, Marin moved toward the obelisk. The closer he got, the more he felt its energy, a subtle vibration that hummed in the air. He reached out slowly, his hand hovering just above its surface. For a moment, he considered pulling back. There was a part of him that feared what might happen if he made contact. But another part, the part that had led him through countless battles, pushed him forward. He touched the obelisk. The world around him seemed to shift, the silence of the room replaced by a low, resonant hum. His vision blurred, and for a moment, it felt as if he were standing in two places at once, here, in the heart of the relic, and somewhere else entirely. Somewhere vast, endless, and dark. There were shapes in the distance, figures that moved like shadows, indistinct but undeniable. And then, just as suddenly, it was over. Marin staggered back, pulling his hand away. His heart raced, his breaths coming in short, sharp bursts. Captain, Griggs was at his side in an instant, his hand on Marin's arm. I'm fine, Marin said, though his voice trembled slightly. He looked at the obelisk, its glow unchanged, as if nothing had happened. But something had. He had felt, connected, somehow, to something beyond his understanding. "What did you see?" Griggs asked, his voice tight. Marin shook his head, trying to make sense of it. "I'm not sure. It was like I was here, but not here. I saw shadows, movement. But it didn't feel threatening. It felt like they were waiting." "Waiting for what?" Malik asked, his eyes wide with curiosity. Marin didn't answer. He wasn't sure. But whatever the obelisk was, it was more than just a machine. It was a gateway, a connection to something larger, something that spanned beyond their current comprehension. "We need more data," Marin said, his voice steadier now. "We need to understand what this thing is, fully. Whatever's hidden here, it's been waiting for someone to find it." Griggs frowned, clearly uncomfortable with the idea of pushing forward. "And what if it's not meant to be found?" "It already has been," Marin replied. "We're here. That means it's already in motion, and we have a choice. Either we learn what this is, or we leave it to someone else to figure out." The team fell silent as they processed Marin's words. He knew the risks, but he also knew they couldn't afford to walk away now. This was bigger than them, bigger than humanity. This structure had been built for a reason, and it had endured for centuries, possibly millennia, waiting for someone to unlock its secrets. "Keep working, Malik," Marin said, turning back to the obelisk. "We need to understand the language, the coding. If this place is a machine, then it has a purpose. We need to know what it's trying to do." Malik nodded, his fingers flying over the scanner once more, deep in concentration. Griggs moved closer to Marin, lowering his voice. "I don't like this, Captain. We're walking into something we don't understand." "I know," Marin said quietly, "but we can't walk away now. This could be bigger than anything we've ever faced. We need to know what we're dealing with before we make any decisions." Griggs hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. "Just be careful. This thing, whatever it is, it's not like anything we've seen before." Marin glanced back at the obelisk, its soft pulse still glowing in the dim light. He could feel it, thrumming beneath his skin, calling to him. The unknown loomed, but he felt a deep-seated need to confront it, to unravel the mysteries woven into its ancient structure. As Malik continued to work, Marin's thoughts drifted to the larger questions that had haunted him since they first discovered this relic. What kind of civilization had built this structure? What had they experienced? What truths had they uncovered that humanity was yet to discover? Perhaps, he thought, this was the heart of the universe's secrets. Perhaps this was where humanity's path would converge with its past, where it would come to understand not only the obelisk but the purpose of its own existence. The air around them shimmered, and Marin felt another pulse, resonating through the walls of the ancient structure. Whatever this obelisk was, it was a repository of knowledge, a guardian of forgotten wisdom that had waited for them to arrive. "Captain," Malik interrupted his thoughts, excitement dancing in his eyes. "I think I'm starting to make sense of some of this." Marin stepped closer, curiosity igniting within him. "What do you have?" "There are patterns," Malik said, pointing to the scanner. "Patterns in the symbols. It's not just a language. It's a blueprint. The builders must have designed this place to serve a specific function, perhaps to communicate with others or to store information in a way that transcends simple text." Marin felt a rush of hope. "Can we access it?" Malik's fingers moved deftly over the screen. "I think so, but we'll need to analyze it further. If we can unlock the language, we might be able to understand the very foundation of their knowledge." "What knowledge?" Griggs asked, skepticism lacing his tone. "What if it's just stories, myths?" "Or it could be the key to understanding the universe," Marin countered, his gaze steady. "It could tell us why they built this place and why it's here. We can't assume it's just myth when it might hold the answers we're seeking." As Malik continued his work, Marin felt the weight of time pressing down on them. They were on the precipice of discovery, a threshold that could lead them to understanding not just the builders of the obelisk, but the very nature of existence itself. Whatever lies ahead, Marin thought, it's a journey worth taking. In that moment, the room pulsed with energy, the obelisk glowing brighter, as if responding to their collective intent. Marin's heart raced. Whatever mysteries the universe held, they were on the brink of unraveling them. But in that same breath, he felt a lingering unease, a whisper of caution that reminded him how precarious their position was. As the scanner beeped and Malik's focus sharpened, Marin took a deep breath, steeling himself for whatever was to come. They had made the choice to confront the unknown, to delve deeper into the fabric of existence, and they would face whatever truths awaited them. The obelisk had awakened, and so too would the secrets of the universe. As the obelisk's glow pulsated rhythmically, the air around the team thickened with an almost electric anticipation. Marin leaned closer to the artifact, a tapestry of glowing symbols unfolding on the scanner's display. Each symbol resonated with a truth waiting to be uncovered, each pulse an echo of lives once lived. "Can you feel that?" Marin's voice broke the silence, thick with emotion. He glanced at Malik, whose eyes were locked onto the screen, a mixture of awe and determination etched into his features. Malik nodded, his fingers dancing across the interface. "It's more than just symbols, it's as if they're alive. I can almost hear them whispering." His brow furrowed in concentration. "They want to be understood." Marin's heart raced at Malik's revelation. This was no ordinary relic. It was a connection to something greater, a bridge to the past. "We have to document everything," he said, the urgency creeping into his tone. "This could change everything." But Griggs stepped forward, his skepticism cutting through the moment. "Or it could lead us down a path we can't return from. We don't know what we're dealing with. Are we prepared for the consequences of unlocking whatever this is?" "Griggs," Malik interjected, his voice firm but understanding. "Knowledge is never without risk. The very act of exploration carries the potential for both enlightenment and destruction. It's up to us to decide how to wield this knowledge." Marin turned to Griggs, feeling the weight of his words. "What if this obelisk holds the answers to questions we didn't even know we had? What if it explains our existence, our purpose? Isn't that worth the risk?" Griggs folded his arms, the shadows deepening across his face. "Purpose? Or perhaps a warning? We could be walking into a trap set by those who came before us, a civilization that may have destroyed itself with the very knowledge we seek." The tension in the air grew thick as Marin considered Griggs's perspective. Perhaps the cautionary tales of the past were more than mere legends. They could be a reflection of humanity's potential fate. "Then we need to be prepared," Marin said finally, determination solidifying in his voice. "We can't let fear dictate our choices. We'll approach this carefully, but we can't turn back now." A collective silence enveloped them, each lost in their thoughts, weighing the risks against the potential rewards. The pulsating light of the obelisk seemed to brighten, almost as if it was reacting to their conversation, urging them to press on. "We should start analyzing the symbols," Malik suggested, shifting focus back to the task at hand. "If we can decode even a fraction of this, it could give us insight into who built this place and why." Marin nodded, stepping back to allow Malik and Griggs more room. He glanced at the obelisk, its surface swirling with colors that seemed to pulse in rhythm with his heartbeat. As he watched, the symbols morphed, shifting in a mesmerizing dance that both fascinated and unnerved him. "Let's focus on one symbol at a time," Malik instructed, his fingers working with a practiced precision. "This one here seems to represent a concept of beginning, a creation motif, perhaps. It could be central to understanding the civilization's worldview." As Malik spoke, Marin found himself lost in contemplation. What kind of beginnings had the builders of this obelisk experienced? Were they like humanity, filled with hope and ambition, or were they marred by conflict and despair? The symbols, he realized, were not just markings. They were reflections of a collective consciousness, an echo of aspirations and failures. A sudden realization washed over him, stirring the depths of his soul. What if their end was a consequence of their own knowledge, he pondered aloud. What if they reached too far, too fast? Perhaps they created something they couldn't control, Malik offered, his eyes wide with realization. A technology or understanding that led to their downfall. Griggs stepped forward, his skepticism morphing into curiosity. And what does that say about us? Are we destined to repeat their mistakes, or can we learn from them? That's the question, isn't it? Marin replied, his gaze fixed on the ever-shifting symbols. Can we rise above our nature? Can we evolve without succumbing to the very desires that lead others to ruin? The silence that followed was heavy with contemplation. Each crew member felt the weight of the conversation settling into their bones. This was no longer just about deciphering ancient symbols. It was about confronting the essence of what it meant to be human. Let's keep working, Malik said, breaking the stillness. We have to document everything, but we need to be careful. I want to run simulations to see if we can identify potential risks. Agreed, Marin replied, his mind racing with possibilities. Let's approach this as scholars, not just explorers. We must respect the knowledge that we're dealing with, as well as the civilization that created it. As they resumed their work, Marin felt a growing connection to the obelisk. It was more than an artifact, it was a reflection of humanity's own journey. Each symbol, each pulse of energy, seemed to carry a message, a lesson woven into the fabric of existence. Hours passed, their surroundings illuminated by the soft glow of the obelisk. Malik's excitement grew as he began to piece together fragments of meaning, revealing glimpses of the civilization that once thrived here. Marin watched, entranced, as they peeled back layers of history, each revelation igniting a fire of understanding within him. Then, with a sudden flash, the obelisk erupted in light, blinding them momentarily. When the brilliance subsided, Marin found himself standing in front of a holographic display, projecting images that filled the chamber with vivid colors and moving figures. "What is this?" Griggs breathed, his skepticism replaced by awe. Malik rushed forward, his hands hovering over the controls. "It's a visualization of their history, I think. Look, there's a timeline. It appears they thrived for centuries before something happened." The images shifted, revealing vibrant landscapes dotted with majestic structures. The civilization appeared advanced, their technology merging seamlessly with nature. But there was an underlying tension in the visuals, as if the harmony was on the brink of disruption. "Look at that," Marin exclaimed, pointing to a scene depicting a gathering of individuals, dressed in robes, faces filled with hope. "They're celebrating something, a significant event, perhaps." As they watched, the scene shifted to a darker portrayal, filled with chaos. Flames consumed structures, and shadowy figures clashed against one another. Marin's heart sank as the atmosphere thickened with a sense of despair. "What happened?" he whispered, horrified by the unfolding narrative. "Maybe it's a record of their fall," Malik replied, his voice laced with urgency. "We need to analyze this closely. There's so much information here." Griggs stepped closer, his skepticism momentarily overshadowed by curiosity. What if they discovered something they shouldn't have? A truth that led to their destruction. As the images continued to shift, Marin felt the pull of history, the weight of consequences heavy in the air. Each frame told a story of ambition, brilliance, and ultimately, ruin. The obelisk held not just the secrets of a civilization, but a warning for humanity as well. "Whatever happened here, we need to heed the lessons," Marin said, his voice steady. "We have a chance to understand them, to learn from their mistakes." But even as he spoke, he could feel the shadows of doubt creeping in. Would they be able to handle the knowledge they uncovered? Or would they, too, fall victim to the same desires that had led this civilization to its end? As they delved deeper into the holographic history, a creeping sense of unease settled within Marin. The more they learned, the more questions arose. The obelisk was revealing secrets, but with each revelation came the weight of responsibility, a responsibility that pressed heavily on his heart. "Let's take a break," Griggs suggested, his tone shifting. "We've been at this for hours. Maybe we need to step back and reassess what we're doing." Malik agreed, the glow from the obelisk casting long shadows across the chamber. "Let's take a moment. We need to process all this information before we go further. As they stepped away from the holographic display, Marin felt a momentary relief. But that relief was short-lived. The questions lingered, swirling in his mind like a storm waiting to unleash its fury. What if the answers they sought were not just the keys to understanding an ancient civilization, but also the keys to their own survival? Would they be wise enough to discern the truth and avoid the same fate? The room was steeped in silence, punctuated only by the distant hum of machinery. Marin's gaze fell upon the obelisk, its surface shimmering with the remnants of the knowledge they had unearthed. It was a vessel of history and a harbinger of caution. Are we ready to confront what lies ahead, he thought, knowing the weight of the journey was only beginning. In that moment, he resolved to guide his crew through the unfolding mystery. They would navigate the waters of knowledge together, forging a path that honored the lessons of the past, while shaping a future that embraced the fullness of their humanity. The air in the chamber felt heavy as the obelisk's holographic projections faded back into the dim glow. Marin stood motionless, his gaze locked on the artifact before him. A strange quietness filled the space, broken only by the faint hum of the ship's systems in the background. The obelisk's pulsating light seemed to dim, as if the rush of revelations had momentarily exhausted its energy. "I don't like this," Griggs muttered, his arms crossed. His expression was tense, his eyes scanning the obelisk as though expecting it to lash out. "This thing is too alive for my taste." Marin glanced at Griggs, noting the unease in his voice. "We didn't come here to like what we found," Marin replied, his voice softer than he intended. "But we came for this. We came for answers." "Answers?" Griggs scoffed. "Look at what they've shown us. Civilizations rising and falling. Destruction. How is any of this supposed to help us?" Malik, who had been quietly adjusting the scanner settings, turned to face them both. His normally calm demeanor seemed rattled, but he tried to hold onto a sense of control. "That's the thing about knowledge," Malik said, his voice deliberate. "It's dangerous. Always has been. That doesn't mean we run from it." "Knowledge didn't destroy them," Marin added, his tone measured. "At least not directly. We don't know the full story yet. The projections, they show pieces, but not the whole." Griggs stepped closer to the obelisk, squinting as if hoping to see past the surface of the alien technology. "So what do we do next? Keep digging until we find out what really happened to them." "We have to," Malik answered. "We have no choice but to keep going." Silence stretched between the three men. Marin could feel the weight of their collective decision pressing down on him. They had already crossed a line, by discovering the obelisk, by engaging with its ancient knowledge. There was no turning back. Marin's thoughts drifted for a moment to Earth, to the weight of expectations placed on this mission. For years, humanity had sought answers beyond the stars, a path forward that might secure their place in the cosmos. The obelisk, despite its age and mystery, felt like a key to something much larger, something that could either uplift or destroy. "We need to be more careful," Marin finally said, breaking the silence. "This is delicate. We're dealing with a civilization that thought differently, lived differently. Whatever happened to them, we need to understand why, so we don't make the same mistakes." Griggs shot him a look. "And how do we do that? We can barely make sense of the symbols." Malik sighed, tapping at his console. "We need time. Time to decode, to understand." "Time we don't have," Griggs muttered under his breath. The pulsating rhythm shifted, growing faster and more erratic. The symbols on its surface began to rearrange themselves, moving in patterns that none of them had seen before. "What the hell?" Griggs took a step back, instinctively reaching for the sidearm at his hip. Malik's fingers flew over the console. "It's reacting to something. We didn't trigger this." Marin felt a chill run down his spine. "What's it doing?" "I don't know." Malik's voice was taut, his eyes locked on the display. "The patterns, it's like they're reorganizing, trying to communicate something." The lights flickered again, and a low hum filled the room, growing louder with each passing second. Marin's heart raced as the obelisk's energy intensified, filling the chamber with an almost tangible force. Griggs moved closer to the console. "Malik, shut it down. Now." "I can't," Malik said, his fingers moving frantically over the controls. "It's not responding to any commands." The hum grew into a deafening roar, and suddenly the obelisk erupted in a burst of light. Marin shielded his eyes, stumbling backward as the ground beneath them shook violently. For a split second, everything was white, blinding, all-consuming. Then, just as quickly as it had begun, the light vanished. The chamber returned to its dimly lit state, the hum fading into silence. Marin blinked, his vision slowly adjusting. "Is everyone okay?" "Yeah," Griggs muttered, though his voice was shaky. He looked at the obelisk with a mix of fear and suspicion. "What the hell was that?" "I think," Malik's voice trailed off as he stared at the console, his eyes wide with disbelief. "I think it just gave us something." "What do you mean?" Marin asked, stepping closer to the display. Malik pointed to the screen. "Look, it's a map." Marin leaned in, squinting at the intricate patterns displayed on the console. It wasn't like any star map he'd ever seen. Lines intersected in complex, seemingly chaotic ways, points of light flickering at various intervals. But as he studied it, the patterns began to make sense. It wasn't a map of space, it was a map of time. Different epochs, layered one on top of the other, each point representing a key moment in the rise and fall of the ancient civilization. This is their history," Malik said, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's showing us where they went, what they did." Griggs stared at the screen, his skepticism melting away into something closer to awe. "So what? We follow the map." Marin felt a strange sense of purpose settle over him. "Yes, we follow it." Malik nodded, his fingers trembling as they hovered over the controls. "It's showing us places we need to go, places connected to the obelisk, to the people who built it. There's more out there, more than we could have imagined." Griggs let out a low whistle. "And here I thought we were just digging up an old relic." Marin felt the corners of his mouth lift into a smile, but it was a smile weighed down by the enormity of what they had just uncovered. This wasn't just about the obelisk anymore. It was about understanding the full story, the rise and fall of a civilization that had once held the keys to the universe. "We need to prepare," Marin said, his voice steady. "We have a long journey ahead of us." As the weight of their discovery settled over them, each man found himself drawn inward, contemplating the path that lay ahead. The obelisk had opened a door to a much larger mystery, one that would take them deeper into the unknown than they had ever thought possible. But with that knowledge came a heavy burden, the understanding that they were not just explorers anymore. They were part of something much greater, something that could reshape humanity's future. The days that followed were a blur of preparation and quiet reflection. Marin spent hours poring over the map, tracing the lines and points with his fingertips as he tried to make sense of the ancient civilization's journey. There were places marked on the map that defied explanation, locations deep in uncharted space, far from any known star systems, but there were also points of convergence, places where the lines of time and history overlapped, suggesting that these were the places where the obelisk's creators had made their most significant discoveries. Malik, ever the scientist, threw himself into analyzing the data with a fervor that bordered on obsession. He worked tirelessly, his eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep as he combed through the obelisk's projections, searching for clues that might help them understand the technology behind the map. Griggs, on the other hand, remained aloof. He had always been more of a pragmatist, more concerned with survival than with philosophical musings about the universe. But even he couldn't ignore the magnitude of what they had discovered. There was a tension in him, a quiet war between curiosity and fear. He often stood by the viewport, staring out into the vastness of space, as if searching for answers that the stars might provide. Despite their different approaches, the three men had grown closer over the past few days, bound by the shared weight of their discovery. Their conversations were deeper, more meaningful. The superficial banter of the past had given way to discussions about fate, destiny, and the nature of existence. One evening, as they sat together in the small mess hall, Marin broke the silence. "You think we're ready for this?" he asked, his gaze shifting between Malik and Griggs. Malik didn't look up from his tablet. "Ready or not, we're already in it." Griggs grunted. "Yeah, but that doesn't mean we're ready. We have no idea what we're walking into." "That's the point," Malik replied, setting the tablet down. "Exploration has never been about knowing what's ahead. It's about taking the first step, no matter what's out there." Marin nodded, his eyes drifting back to the viewport. This feels different. Bigger, like we're not just exploring space anymore, we're exploring something much deeper." Griggs shrugged. "Maybe we are, but we can't lose sight of the basics. Survival, that's our first priority. If we're dead, none of this matters." "Agreed," Marin said. "But we can't ignore what we've found. This isn't just about survival anymore, it's about understanding." Malik leaned forward, his expression earnest. "Understanding is what will keep us alive. The more we know about what happened to them, the better prepared we'll be for whatever challenges lie ahead." Griggs stared at Malik, weighing his words. "So what's our next move?" Marin took a deep breath. "We follow the map. We see where it leads us. But we do it carefully. We're not just going into the unknown, we're going into history. We need to respect what we find." As they talked, Marin couldn't shake the feeling that their journey was about to take a significant turn. They were no longer just men aboard a ship. They were guardians of a legacy, tasked with uncovering the truth of a civilization that had come before them. In the coming days, they plotted their course, setting their sights on the first point marked on the obelisk's map, a planet that seemed to vibrate with a strange energy, an oasis of life amidst the desolation of space. As they approached the planet, Marin could feel the weight of anticipation. He stood at the helm, watching as the landscape came into view through the viewport. Lush greens and vibrant blues contrasted sharply with the dark void surrounding them, creating a striking tableau that beckoned them closer. "Coordinates locked," Malik announced, his voice steady. "Entering orbit." "Prepare for landing," Marin commanded, his heart racing. As the ship descended into the planet's atmosphere, the colors outside shifted, morphing into a kaleidoscope of hues as they broke through the clouds. The landscape revealed itself in breathtaking detail, towering trees with luminescent leaves, rivers that sparkled like liquid crystal, and strange, vibrant creatures flitting through the air. "Beautiful," Griggs murmured, momentarily forgetting his usual reticence. "Yeah," Marin breathed, captivated by the scenery. "But we need to stay focused." The ship touched down on a flat clearing, the engines humming as they powered down. Marin felt a thrill of excitement wash over him as the hatch opened, revealing the lush terrain outside. "Remember, we're here to gather information. This is a new world, and we have no idea what's waiting for us," he reminded the crew, his voice carrying an undercurrent of authority. Malik stepped out first, his eyes wide as he absorbed the alien surroundings. "Incredible. The biosphere is unlike anything we've encountered before." Marin followed, taking a moment to appreciate the air's richness. The scent of flora filled his lungs, invigorating him. He turned to Griggs, who was still in the ship, checking their equipment. "Griggs, you coming?" Marin called. "Just checking our gear," Griggs replied, finally stepping out. "I'll be right behind you." The three men moved cautiously through the underbrush, the vibrant foliage brushing against their suits. The atmosphere was thick with life, a symphony of sounds, chirps, rustles, and distant calls surrounding them. "Keep your eyes peeled for anything unusual," Marin instructed, his senses heightened. "We don't know what we're dealing with here." As they ventured deeper into the forest, the surroundings shifted subtly. The flora became denser, and the air thickened with humidity. Marin felt the presence of something ancient here, a pulse that resonated beneath the surface. "Over here," Malik called, his voice echoing through the trees. He gestured toward a clearing up ahead. "There's something unusual." They hurried toward Malik, curiosity driving them forward. As they emerged into the clearing, Marin's breath caught in his throat. Before them stood an enormous structure, its surface glistening under the dappled sunlight filtering through the trees. The architecture was alien yet eerily familiar, curved lines and organic shapes that seemed to breathe with the surrounding landscape. It was a monument, perhaps a temple, constructed from materials that shimmered with an iridescent sheen. This could be part of their civilization, Malik breathed, all filling his voice. Griggs frowned, scanning the area for any signs of danger. Or a trap. We need to be cautious. Agreed, Marin said, stepping forward with purpose. But this is what we came for. We need to explore it, understand its significance. As they approached the structure, the air around them began to hum softly, a vibration that resonated deep within their chests. Marin could feel the energy of the place, a tangible force that urged them closer. "What is this?" Griggs whispered, glancing around as if expecting something to emerge from the shadows. "Let's find out," Marin replied, leading the way inside. The entrance was framed by intricate carvings that seemed to tell a story, scenes of beings in harmony with nature, of rituals and celebrations. Marin traced his fingers along the surface, feeling the warmth of the material beneath his touch. Inside, the structure opened up into a vast chamber, its ceiling lost in shadow. Bioluminescent plants adorned the walls, casting a soft, ethereal glow that illuminated the space. In the center stood a large pedestal, adorned with the same symbols that had danced across the obelisk. "What is this place?" Malik whispered, his eyes wide with wonder. "I don't know," Marin admitted, stepping closer to the pedestal. "But I feel like we're on the brink of something monumental." As they gathered around the pedestal, the symbols pulsed in rhythm with the energy of the chamber. Marin's heart raced, an almost primal instinct urging him to connect with the ancient relic before them. "What do you think it does?" Griggs asked, his skepticism giving way to intrigue. "Only one way to find out," Marin replied, glancing at Malik. "We need to see if it responds to us." "Wait," Malik cautioned, stepping forward. "We should analyze it first. There could be traps, or it could be dangerous." "I don't think it will hurt us," Marin said, his voice steady. "It's a part of their history. We have to engage with it." Griggs crossed his arms, his expression skeptical. "If it gets us killed, I'm blaming you." Ignoring Griggs' reticence, Marin reached out and placed his hand on the pedestal. Instantly, the symbols began to shift and swirl, dancing across the surface like fireflies in the night. The hum in the air intensified, growing into a symphony of sound that resonated deep within him. "Marin, what's happening?" Malik shouted, alarm creeping into his voice. "I don't know," Marin replied, his heart racing as the energy surged around them. The symbols merged into a single, glowing form that enveloped him in a cocoon of light. He felt a rush of images and sensations flood his mind, memories, emotions, echoes of a life lived long ago. He was no longer standing in the chamber. He was witnessing the history of the civilization unfold before him. There were images of flourishing cities, of families gathered in celebration, of explorers venturing into the unknown. And then, suddenly, chaos, flames, destruction, the cries of despair. "Marin!" Griggs' voice cut through the haze, pulling him back to reality. With a gasp, Marin stumbled backward, breaking the connection. The light faded, and he collapsed to the ground, breathless. The chamber was silent once more, the energy dissipating like smoke. "Are you okay?" Malik knelt beside him, concern etched on his face. I saw something," Marin panted, struggling to regain his composure. Their history. It was all there, joy, sorrow, everything. "What did you see?" Griggs asked, the skepticism in his voice replaced by a strange urgency. "Everything," Marin replied, his mind racing. "They thrived for so long. But then, it all fell apart. They faced challenges we can't even imagine." Malik looked troubled. "What kind of challenges?" "I don't know," Marin admitted, his heart heavy with the weight of the revelation. "But we have to figure it out. They're warning us about something." Griggs helped Marin to his feet, his expression serious. "We need to leave. Now. Whatever this place is, it's not just a monument, it's a warning." Marin nodded, though he felt a sense of urgency that pulled him in the opposite direction. The monument held answers, secrets waiting to be uncovered. They couldn't turn their backs on the knowledge that lay within. "We can't leave yet," Marin insisted, a fire igniting in his chest. "We have to understand what we've discovered. This is just the beginning." As he spoke, Marin could see the fear and determination reflected in their faces. They had crossed a threshold, and there was no returning to the safety of ignorance. The stakes had risen, and the legacy of the ancient civilization hung in the balance. Together, they had to uncover the truth, not just for themselves, but for all of humanity. The journey ahead would demand more than they had ever imagined, testing their resolve and their very humanity. The soft hum of the ship's engines blended seamlessly with the rustle of foliage outside, creating an ambient backdrop that settled over Marin and his crew as they stood within the ancient monument. The atmosphere was thick with unspoken anticipation, each man aware that they had crossed a threshold into something vast and unfathomable. The monumental structure loomed above them, an edifice carved from time itself, inviting yet imposing. Marin stepped away from the pedestal, his heart still racing from the surge of energy that had washed over him moments before. The glowing symbols had flickered and danced, casting ethereal light across the chamber's walls. Each pulse had felt like a heartbeat, a connection to something far greater than themselves. This place, with its whispers of history and echoes of lives lived, bore witness to a civilization that had thrived, stumbled, and ultimately faded into memory. He turned to Malik and Griggs, both still processing the enormity of what had just transpired. Their expressions reflected a mix of awe and apprehension, the lines of their faces etched deeper with the weight of revelation. "What now?" Griggs asked, his voice low and cautious. His skepticism had not vanished, but it was tempered now with a sense of urgency. The raw energy they had felt was undeniable, and it had shifted the nature of their mission. "We need to explore further," Marin replied, his voice steady despite the tumult of thoughts racing through his mind. "There has to be more to this place, more to understand about what happened here." Malik nodded slowly, looking around the chamber as if the walls themselves held secrets waiting to be unlocked. "If the symbols on the pedestal reacted to your touch, perhaps they can guide us. Maybe there's a way to decipher their meaning." Griggs moved to the entrance, glancing back at Marin. "I'll keep watch. If something goes wrong, we need an escape route." As Griggs stationed himself at the threshold, Marin and Malik turned their attention back to the pedestal. The light from the symbols still flickered faintly, and Marin felt an inexplicable pull toward them, a beckoning to engage once more. "Let's see if we can understand the context of what we felt," Marin said, his mind racing with possibilities. "If this monument is a reflection of their civilization, then every symbol, every carving, must hold significance." Malik crouched beside the pedestal, his gaze focused. "Look at this," he pointed to a cluster of symbols that appeared to be interconnected, flowing into one another. "These lines suggest a relationship. They could represent cycles, birth, growth, decline, maybe even a warning." Marin leaned in closer, tracing the symbols with his fingertips, feeling the warmth beneath the surface. What if they are a record of events, a narrative woven into their culture? "Or a guide," Malik suggested. "If they experience some form of catastrophe, perhaps they're trying to communicate how they overcame it, or how they failed." As the two men contemplated the meanings behind the symbols, they became acutely aware of the silence that enveloped them. It was a silence thick with expectation, as if the very stones of the monument were listening, waiting for the next chapter of their story to unfold. Marin stood up straight, glancing at Malik with a renewed sense of purpose. "Let's start documenting everything. We can analyze it later, but right now we need to capture our findings while they're fresh." Malik pulled out a small tablet, the screen glowing faintly in the dim light of the chamber. He began to sketch the symbols as Marin continued to study the pedestal, searching for any clues that might lead them deeper into the monument's mysteries. As they worked, Marin felt the environment shift around them. The hum of energy had quieted, replaced by a deeper resonance. It was as if the monument itself were observing them, shifting to accommodate their presence. Marin couldn't shake the feeling that they were intruders in a sacred space, yet their purpose felt righteous. They were seekers of truth, trying to piece together a narrative that had been lost to time. "Look at this," Malik said suddenly, his voice rising with excitement. "This symbol here, it's similar to the one we saw on the obelisk." He pointed to a pattern that mirrored the one Marin had examined back on their ship. Marin's pulse quickened. That could mean these symbols are not just isolated. They could form a network of knowledge across the civilization. If we can find other locations like this one, we might begin to understand their history in a broader context. The realization brought with it a sense of urgency. They were not merely explorers, they were custodians of a legacy. They had a responsibility to piece together what had been lost, to understand what had driven the civilization to its knees. "Let's document as much as we can," Marin urged. "Every symbol, every detail could be crucial." They worked in silence, the focus shifting to their task as they painstakingly recorded the intricate designs. Hours passed unnoticed, the weight of their endeavor drawing them deeper into the monument's embrace. The air thickened with potential, an electric charge that hinted at the presence of knowledge waiting to be unearthed. As Marin sketched one particularly intricate symbol, a faint shimmer caught his eye from the corner of the room. He turned, narrowing his gaze toward the wall behind the pedestal. It appeared to ripple, the surface undulating as if alive. "Malik," he called, excitement threading through his voice. "Over here." Malik joined him, his expression shifting from concentration to curiosity as he approached the wall. "What do you think it is?" "Something more," Marin replied, stepping closer. "A hidden layer, perhaps, another method of communication." With cautious hands, Marin reached out to touch the shimmering surface. As his fingers made contact, a wave of energy coursed through him, and the wall came alive with movement. Symbols flared to life, illuminating the chamber in a cascade of colors. Images flickered before him, scenes of the ancient civilization in their prime, vibrant and full of life. Marin felt himself drawn into the vision, watching as families gathered under starlit skies, communities thriving in harmony with nature. It was a testament to their achievements, showcasing art, science, and culture flourishing in unison. But the images soon shifted, revealing darker moments. Shadows crept into the vibrant scenes, conflict, destruction, despair. The once harmonious gatherings were replaced by chaos and confusion, cries of anguish echoing through the chamber. "No," Marin gasped, recoiling as the weight of their downfall crashed over him. Malik stumbled backward, fear etched across his features. "What is happening?" he demanded, a tremor in his voice. Marin fought against the overwhelming tide of emotion that threatened to pull him under. "It's their history, what they experienced. They want us to see, to understand the cycle they endured." "Understand what?" Malik shouted, panic rising. "What are we supposed to do with this?" Marin turned back to the wall, forcing himself to focus. "There has to be a message in these images, a lesson they want us to learn. We can't look away. We need to see this through." The scenes continued to unfold, shifting from the pain of loss to moments of resilience. Groups banding together, finding strength in unity, seeking solutions amid despair. The images became a testament to their spirit, a narrative of hope fighting against the darkness. "Look," Marin pointed, his voice steadier now. "They're forming alliances. They're reaching out to neighboring worlds for support." Malik leaned in, watching intently as the scenes played out. "This is what we need to learn. Collaboration, resilience. They faced their challenges head-on. But just as hope began to blossom within the vision, shadows returned, a looming threat casting a pall over the vibrant images. A figure emerged, clad in dark armor, leading an army that overwhelmed the peaceful communities. Marin felt the ground shift beneath him, the energy around them pulsating with the weight of the unfolding narrative. "This is the catastrophe," he breathed. "This is what they were warning us about." Malik's expression turned grim as the vision continued. "We need to document this, record every detail." The tension in the chamber thickened as the final scenes played out. Marin felt the weight of their despair, the loss of life and culture reverberating within him. He could sense the power of their legacy being threatened, the finality of it all pressing heavily against his chest. Then, just as quickly as it had begun, the vision dimmed, the images flickering and fading into darkness. The shimmer of the wall returned to a dull sheen, leaving the chamber quiet once more. Marin stood in stunned silence, the echo of their downfall hanging heavily in the air. "What do we do now?" he whispered, turning to Malik, who wore an expression of shock. "We have to keep going," Malik said, his voice steadying. "We need to find a way to share this, warn others. We can't let this happen again." "Agreed," Marin replied, though a heaviness settled over him. "But we also need to understand how they overcame these challenges. What gave them the strength to rise again?" As Griggs stepped back into the chamber, his brow furrowed with concern, Marin gestured toward the wall. "You won't believe what we just experienced." "Let's not waste time on explanations," Griggs replied, scanning the chamber with a watchful eye. "If there's more to discover, we need to move." "Right," Marin said, shaking off the weight of the vision. "Let's see what else this place has to offer." With renewed determination, they pressed deeper into the monument. As they walked, Marin's mind raced with thoughts of the civilization they were uncovering. Each corner turned felt like a step toward uncovering the essence of what had been lost. The weight of history bore down on him, urging him to listen, to learn, to discover the truths that had shaped their world. They reached a large chamber, its walls adorned with intricate carvings that told stories in visual form. The artistry was exquisite, each detail meticulously crafted to convey emotion and intent. Marin felt an overwhelming sense of reverence as he stepped into the space. "This is incredible," Malik breathed, his eyes wide with wonder. "It's like a visual narrative of their history." Marin moved closer, tracing the carvings with his fingers. The stories unfolded before him, images of birth and growth, joy and sorrow, struggle and triumph. It was a tapestry of existence, woven with care and intention. "Every story has its lessons," Marin murmured, lost in the moment. "These carvings speak of resilience, of a society that faced its challenges and learned from them." Griggs stepped forward, scrutinizing the imagery. "But can we extract those lessons for our own survival?" Marin paused, contemplating the question. "That's what we need to find out. We must understand how they transformed pain into strength, how they rebuilt from the ashes." As they studied the carvings, the room seemed to come alive, a resonance humming beneath the surface, echoing the stories etched into the walls. The air felt charged, as if the very essence of the civilization was reaching out to them, offering guidance and insight. Hours slipped by as they absorbed the intricate details, each carving igniting a spark of inspiration. They recorded their findings, capturing the essence of the stories that surrounded them. The passage of time became irrelevant, the outside world fading into obscurity as they immersed themselves in the wisdom of the past. Marin felt a sense of connection, as if the very heartbeat of the civilization pulsed through the air, echoing in his chest. Eventually, as the chamber began to dim with the approach of twilight, a sense of urgency stirred within Marin. "We should head back soon. We need to consolidate our findings and plan our next steps." Reluctantly, the others agreed, their hearts heavy with the weight of what they had learned. They retraced their steps through the monument, the echoes of history resonating with each footfall. As they stepped outside, the cool night air enveloped them, and the stars above seemed to twinkle in response to their revelation. They had witnessed the rise and fall of a civilization, and now they carried the burden of its legacy. The ship sat silently in the clearing, waiting to bear them back to their own world. The hum of the engines felt like a reminder of their responsibility, a call to action urging them to share the lessons they had unearthed. Marin stood for a moment, gazing back at the monument. The towering structure felt alive, imbued with the essence of those who had come before. It was a sanctuary of knowledge, a testament to the complexities of existence. "We have to make sure this story is told," Marin said, a sense of determination solidifying within him. "Their past cannot become ours." The others nodded in agreement, their expressions reflecting a shared commitment to the task ahead. As they climbed aboard the ship, a sense of purpose filled the air. They were not just explorers, they were custodians of a legacy, armed with the knowledge of the past and a commitment to shape a better future. The engines roared to life, propelling them into the stars. As the monument faded into the distance, Marin couldn't help but feel a surge of hope. They had uncovered the wisdom of a civilization that had faced the abyss, and now they were tasked with ensuring that its lessons would not be forgotten. The journey ahead would not be easy, but they were ready to navigate the complexities of the universe, guided by the echoes of history and the promise of a better tomorrow. The ship sliced through the silence of space, the hum of the engines a constant reminder of their journey. Marin sat in the cockpit, his fingers resting lightly on the control panel, feeling the pulse of the craft as it glided through the void. The distant stars glimmered against the black canvas of the universe, each a silent witness to their expedition. He had never been particularly fond of the dark. It felt too vast, too indifferent. Yet, as he gazed out, he found a strange comfort in the constancy of the stars, a stark contrast to the uncertainties that lay ahead. Behind him, Malik and Griggs were poring over the data they had gathered from the monument. Their voices, low and concentrated, filled the small space. The camaraderie forged during the intense hours in the monument seemed to linger, a shared understanding of the weight of their discovery. Each of them carried the burden of knowledge, but the dynamic had shifted. There was a deeper connection among them now, a bond formed through the weight of history they had witnessed together. "Look at this," Malik said, gesturing to the tablet laid out before him. "These symbols correlate with the records we have from other sites. If we can establish a pattern, we might be able to piece together their narrative." Griggs leaned closer, his brow furrowing as he examined the information. "It's a vast web, but it's taking shape. We could have a clearer picture of what they experienced." Marin turned in his seat, sensing the shift in energy among his crew. "What do you think is the most significant aspect we've uncovered so far?" he asked, genuinely curious. "The resilience," Malik replied, his voice steady. "They faced insurmountable odds, yet they continued to strive for survival. It's a lesson we can learn from, especially now." "True," Griggs added, his eyes narrowing as he focused on the screen. "But we also have to consider their failures. They couldn't prevent their downfall, and that's a warning for us." Marin nodded, appreciating the depth of their conversation. "It's about balance, isn't it? Acknowledging both their triumphs and their failures. We cannot ignore the mistakes that led to their collapse. We need to understand them to avoid repeating history." Silence settled in the cockpit, each of them reflecting on their words. The enormity of their responsibility weighed heavily, yet there was a shared determination among them. They were not just conduits of information, they were harbingers of a message that transcended time and space. "Let's consider our next steps," Marin said, breaking the silence. "We have a wealth of information, but it's just the beginning. We need to establish communication with the Council and share what we've found." "Agreed," Malik replied. "But we also need to strategize. If we're to influence change, we must present our findings in a way that resonates. We can't simply present data. We need to tell their story." "Right," Marin said, feeling the weight of responsibility shift from the monument to them. "Their legacy must be preserved and honored. It's not just about the information, it's about the lives that were lost and the lessons they left behind." Griggs leaned back, contemplating their next move. "It's going to take more than just facts. We need to connect with people on an emotional level. If we can evoke empathy, we can inspire change." Malik's gaze flickered to the stars outside. "It's a delicate balance, isn't it? We're asking people to confront the uncomfortable truths of their past." As the conversation unfolded, Marin's thoughts drifted to the intricacies of their mission. Each step they took was laden with potential consequences. The council was a powerful body, but it was also steeped in tradition and resistant to change. He had witnessed their unwillingness to adapt before. The fear of the unknown often paralyzed their capacity for growth. "Let's gather all the data and start drafting a presentation," Marin suggested, redirecting their focus. "We need to lay out the narrative clearly and concisely. We'll use the visuals from the monument to enhance our message." Hours passed as they worked, each member of the crew absorbed in their respective tasks. The atmosphere buzzed with a shared sense of urgency, the ship now a hub of activity. They combed through the data, extracting relevant details and weaving them into a coherent narrative. Marin felt a growing sense of purpose as he pieced together the story. He wanted their message to resonate, to reach the hearts and minds of those who would hear it. The civilization they had encountered was not merely a relic of the past. It was a testament to the human experience, a reflection of their own struggles and triumphs. As the ship traveled toward the Council's homeworld, Marin found himself reflecting on the broader implications of their journey. The Council had become a bastion of the status quo, often stifling innovation in favor of preserving what was familiar. They needed to see the value of embracing change, of understanding that growth often stemmed from acknowledging the past. "Marin," Malik interrupted his thoughts, snapping him back to the present. "Take a look at this." He pointed to a section of data that revealed correlations between the events depicted in the monument and historical records from their own civilization. Marin leaned closer, absorbing the information. "This is significant," he said, feeling a sense of urgency. "It's a direct link to our own history. We can show them that our past mirrors theirs. They won't just see it as an ancient civilization. They'll recognize the lessons as relevant to their own lives." "Exactly," Malik replied, enthusiasm evident in his tone. "If we can highlight these parallels, we might capture their attention. It's about making the story relatable." Griggs nodded in agreement, his focus sharpening. "This is our opportunity to connect their experiences with our current struggles. We need to bridge the gap between past and present." As they refined their presentation, the ship glided through the depths of space, the familiar terrain of their homeworld slowly coming into view. Marin felt a mix of excitement and apprehension as they prepared to re-enter a world steeped in tradition, where change was often met with resistance. The Council's headquarters loomed ahead, a sprawling complex of gleaming structures that seemed to pierce the sky. Marin's heart quickened. This was where they would share their findings, where they would attempt to awaken a consciousness that had long been dormant. "Prepare for docking," Marin instructed, his voice steady despite the tension simmering beneath the surface. The others nodded, their expressions reflecting the gravity of the moment. As the ship touched down, the familiar surroundings of their homeworld enveloped them. Marin took a deep breath, steadying himself for the task ahead. He turned to his crew, the bond forged through shared experience shining in their eyes. "Remember," he said, his voice low but firm, "we're not just presenting data. We're sharing a narrative, a warning, and a lesson. We have to remain grounded in our message. Their understanding of the past is vital to shaping the future." With a shared sense of determination, they disembarked from the ship, stepping into the bustling activity of the Council's headquarters. The atmosphere hummed with urgency, a blend of anticipation and skepticism. Members of the Council moved with purpose, their faces etched with the weight of responsibility. As they entered the main hall, Marin felt the gravity of the moment settle over him. The room was filled with delegates from various sectors, all gathered to discuss pressing issues facing their society. He could feel the energy in the air, a mix of hope and doubt swirling around them. Malik stepped forward, raising his hand to gain attention. "We have vital information to share," he announced, his voice carrying across the room. "Information that could reshape our understanding of our history." Eyes turned toward them, some filled with curiosity, others with skepticism. Marin stepped beside Malik, feeling the weight of expectation. "We've uncovered insights from a long-lost civilization," he began, grounding himself in the significance of their mission. "Their experiences echo our own, revealing patterns of resilience and failure that we must learn from. The murmurs grew louder, a mix of interest and doubt. Marin pressed on, determined to convey the urgency of their message. We have the opportunity to understand not just the mistakes they made, but also how they found the strength to rise again. Their legacy is our legacy. As he spoke, he could see the subtle shift in expressions among the delegates. Some leaned in, intrigued, while others remained rigid, clinging to the familiar. We've documented their struggles, Griggs added, stepping forward to support Marin. Their story is one of survival, collaboration, and ultimately, caution. We can't afford to ignore the lessons they impart. Malik presented the visual data, projecting images from the monument onto the large screen behind them. The intricate carvings came to life, telling a story of hope interspersed with shadows of despair. The room fell silent as the delegates absorbed the weight of the narrative unfolding before them. Marin watched as the faces in the crowd shifted, the initial skepticism giving way to contemplation. It was a delicate dance, the interplay of tradition and progress played out in real time. They were not just sharing information, they were inviting the council to confront uncomfortable truths. Their civilization fell, Marin continued, his voice unwavering. But they learned, they adapted. We stand on the precipice of our own future, and we must heed the warnings etched into their history. As he spoke, he felt the urgency of the moment intensify. This was not just a presentation, it was a call to action. It was a chance to awaken the council to the complexities of their existence, to challenge the complacency that had taken root. The room stirred with murmurs, and Marin seized the opportunity. We are not alone in this universe. There are others who have faced the abyss, and their stories hold the key to our survival. We can't allow fear to dictate our path. Instead, we must learn from our past and evolve. A voice from the back interrupted, laced with skepticism. And how do we know this isn't merely an anomaly? How do we know their experiences are applicable to us? Marin felt a surge of determination. Because we've lived through similar trials, we've faced our own darkness. Our journey is not so different from theirs, and denying that connection only furthers our isolation. Another delegate chimed in, but what if the past doesn't hold the answers? What if we need to forge our own path without the weight of history? Malik responded, his voice steady. History is not a weight, it's a compass. We don't have to replicate their mistakes, but we can learn from them. To dismiss their lessons is to disregard the essence of our humanity. As the debate unfolded, Marin felt a mix of hope and frustration. The room was alive with energy, each exchange fueling their mission. They were not merely presenting data, they were igniting a conversation, one that was necessary, albeit uncomfortable. Time passed, the dialogue weaving through the complexities of tradition and innovation. The council members deliberated, wrestling with the implications of their findings. Marin felt the weight of anticipation build. This was a turning point, a chance to alter the trajectory of their society. Eventually, a senior member of the council, known for her staunch traditionalism, rose to speak. Your findings have merit, she acknowledged, her voice measured. But we must tread carefully. Change cannot come at the expense of our values. We must ensure that progress aligns with our principles. Marin nodded, appreciating the delicate balance she presented. I agree. But we must also recognize that our principles can evolve. We must be willing to adapt if we are to survive in a changing universe. With the room in a thoughtful silence, Marin sensed a shift. The council members were beginning to acknowledge the relevance of the past and its potential impact on their future. This was a vital step, an acknowledgement that their history was intertwined with their present. The discussion continued, the tension easing as the delegates explored the implications of their findings. They began to formulate plans for integrating the lessons learned into their policies, recognizing that the weight of history could inform a more sustainable future. As the meeting concluded, Marin felt a sense of accomplishment. They had not only shared their findings, they had sparked a movement. The echoes of the past resonated in the present, forging connections that transcended time. As they left the chamber, Malik turned to Marin, a smile breaking across his face. We did it. We ignited a dialogue. Griggs joined them, his expression a mixture of disbelief and pride. I didn't think they'd be so receptive. This could be the start of something significant. Marin couldn't help but share in their excitement. It's just the beginning, he said, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. We have a long way to go, but we've taken a vital step forward. As they stepped into the bustling corridors of the council building, Marin felt a wave of hope wash over him. They had embarked on a journey of discovery, unearthing the complexities of their past to illuminate the path ahead. The lessons of the monument would not be forgotten. They had become a part of their narrative. And as they walked into the future, the weight of responsibility settled comfortably on Marin's shoulders. The echoes of history would guide them, and he was determined to ensure that the story of the lost civilization would not fade into obscurity. Together, they would navigate the complexities of existence, armed with the wisdom of the past and a commitment to shaping a better tomorrow. The ship cruised smoothly through the void, its metallic body glinting under the distant light of stars. Marin settled into the pilot's seat, the familiar contours of the control panel grounding him as he adjusted their course towards the council's headquarters. Each movement felt deliberate, purposeful. They were no longer drifting aimlessly through the cosmos. They carried a mission now, a narrative woven from fragments of the past, burdened with the weight of history. In the rear of the cockpit, Malik and Griggs were bent over their data tablets, their brows furrowed in concentration. The atmosphere was charged with an undercurrent of tension and expectation. They had delved into the monument's records, unearthing insights that span millennia. Yet, the implications of their findings lay heavy on their shoulders, and as Marin glanced back, he felt the gravity of their task. "Did you find anything else in the last round of analysis?" Marin asked, breaking the silence. He needed to stay connected to their work, to remind himself of their shared purpose. Malik looked up, pushing a few strands of hair from his forehead. "We've correlated the symbols from the monument with historical records. It's not just a collection of events. It's a comprehensive account of their rise and fall. We might be able to draw parallels to our own history." Griggs nodded, excitement evident in his eyes. "If we can show the Council that these patterns exist, we might have a chance to shift their perspective. They need to see that ignoring the past could lead to repeating it." Marin nodded, feeling the spark of hope ignite within him. "That's the goal. We need to frame our findings not just as data, but as a warning and an opportunity for growth. Their legacy could provide us the insight we need to change our trajectory." As the ship continued its journey, Marin shifted his focus back to the controls, feeling the rhythmic hum of the engines beneath him. The vastness of space sprawled before them, a dark expanse punctuated by the flicker of distant stars. Each of those stars represented a world, a history, and perhaps lessons waiting to be uncovered. He found comfort in this idea, a reminder that even in darkness, light persisted. They approached the Council's headquarters, a massive structure that dominated the skyline. The Council was more than a governing body. It was the embodiment of tradition, a legacy of decisions made long before Marin or his crew had taken their first breaths. Its imposing facade spoke of authority and permanence, yet Marin felt a flicker of defiance rise within him. Change was possible, it had to be. As they docked, the ship's thrusters hummed down, the vibrations resonating through the metal floors. Marin exchanged a glance with Malik and Griggs, silently acknowledging the weight of the moment. They were stepping into a place where ideas were challenged, where history was interpreted, and where the future could very well be decided. Upon disembarking, they were met with the usual bustle of the Council's corridors, delegates in crisp uniforms, their faces set in expressions of determination or disinterest, depending on the day's agenda. "Stay focused," he advised quietly as they moved through the throng. "We need to present our findings clearly. Let's avoid getting sidetracked by debates that don't pertain to our mission." Malik glanced sideways, a mix of anticipation and anxiety in his expression. "I just hope they're willing to listen." "They will," Marin replied, a sense of conviction rising within him. The lessons of the past may be uncomfortable, but they are essential. As they entered the main assembly hall, the atmosphere shifted. The vast space was lined with delegates seated in a semicircle, their attention directed toward the central podium where discussions unfolded. The air buzzed with a blend of apprehension and eagerness, the kind that accompanied significant decisions. Marin approached the podium, taking a deep breath to steady himself. He glanced at Malik and Griggs, both nodding slightly, their expressions reflecting the shared sense of purpose. They had come prepared, not just with information, but with a mission to bridge the past with the present. "Esteemed members of the Council," Marin began, his voice resonating across the hall. "We stand before you today not merely as explorers, but as messengers of a civilization lost to time. We have unearthed narratives that resonate with our own, and it is imperative we share these insights with you." A ripple of interest flowed through the assembly. Marin could see delegates leaning in, their expressions shifting from skepticism to curiosity. He felt a sense of encouragement wash over him. This was the moment they had worked toward. "We've uncovered records from a monument that chronicles the rise and fall of an ancient civilization," he continued, maintaining eye contact with several delegates. "Their journey is one marked by triumph and tragedy, resilience and failure. We can glean important lessons from their experiences, lessons that are crucial for our own survival." Griggs stepped up beside Marin, projecting visuals from the monument onto the large screen behind them. The intricate symbols illuminated the hall, bringing the ancient records to life. These images depict their societal structures, their conflicts, and ultimately, their collapse. We believe that by understanding their past, we can illuminate pathways to a more sustainable future. Malik took a deep breath and added, "What we present is not just history. It is a mirror reflecting our own potential paths. Their failures are warnings that we cannot afford to ignore, and their successes provide a blueprint for resilience." The delegates exchanged glances, some whispering among themselves. Marin sensed the shift in the room. A cautious optimism began to replace skepticism. They were engaging with the narrative, considering its implications. "Why should we believe that their experiences are applicable to us?" A voice called from the back. A delegate with a stern expression leaned forward, challenging their premise. Marin felt the tension rise, but remained steadfast. "Because history often repeats itself. We've seen our own civilization face crises that echo those of the past. Ignoring these connections would be a disservice to our future." Another delegate interjected, "But every civilization is unique. What worked for them may not work for us. How can we be sure?" Griggs stepped in, his voice steady. "We can't guarantee success, but we can mitigate risk. By learning from their mistakes, we gain insight into our vulnerabilities. Understanding where they went wrong allows us to navigate our own challenges more effectively." Marin felt the momentum building. They were not just presenting data, they were weaving a narrative that spoke to the very essence of human experience. He could see the delegates shifting, their expressions thoughtful as they processed the information. A senior member of the council stood, her presence commanding attention. "If we are to take this seriously, we need more than just anecdotes. What empirical evidence do you have to support these claims?" Marin glanced at Malik, who responded quickly. "We've collected data from various sites that show correlations between environmental changes and societal collapse. We can provide comprehensive reports detailing these findings, including the analysis we conducted on the monument itself." The senior member considered their response, her expression contemplative. "Very well. We will need to review this data thoroughly. But tell me, what do you propose we do with this knowledge?" Marin felt the weight of her question. "We need to integrate these lessons into our policies. We must create frameworks that allow for adaptability and resilience. Our society must be willing to embrace change while respecting our roots." The room buzzed with discussion, delegates exchanging opinions and weighing the implications of Marin's words. The interplay of voices created a symphony of ideas, a dialogue that seemed to deepen with each moment. After a brief deliberation, the senior member raised her hand for silence. It appears that you have opened a door for discussion. While we may not come to an immediate consensus, we are intrigued by your findings. We will initiate a committee to further explore these ideas and consider the potential integration into our frameworks." Marin felt a wave of relief wash over him. They had ignited a conversation that could lead to real change. "Thank you," he said, his voice steady. "We are ready to assist in any way we can." As the assembly adjourned, Marin stepped away from the podium, the tension in his shoulders easing. Malik and Griggs joined him, their expressions a mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. "We did it," Malik said, a hint of disbelief in his voice. "They're actually considering it." Griggs grinned, his eyes sparkling with excitement. "This is just the beginning. If we can keep the momentum going, we might really inspire change." Marin nodded, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. They had come to the council not just with information, but with a vision for the future. The lessons of the past were not merely academic. They were a call to action, a reminder that their choices would shape the path ahead. As they exited the hall, the bustling corridors seemed to pulse with a new energy. Delegates passed by, some nodding in acknowledgement, others engaged in hushed conversations about the implications of the presentation. Marin felt a connection to the broader narrative unfolding, each person a thread in the tapestry of their shared existence. "Where do we go from here?" Malik asked as they navigated through the crowd. "What's our next step?" "We gather the data we promised and work closely with the committee," Marin replied, his mind racing with possibilities. "We need to ensure our findings are presented clearly and compellingly. We cannot lose sight of the urgency of our message." Griggs added, "We also need to keep engaging with the delegates. Building relationships will be key to our success. We can't just present information, we need to inspire them to action." Marin agreed, appreciating Griggs's perspective. "Let's make it a priority to connect with those who seem receptive. We need allies in this endeavor." As they exited the council building, the evening sun bathed the city in a warm glow. The skyline stood tall against the fading light, a testament to their civilization's achievements and aspirations. Marin felt a flicker of hope kindling within him. They had embarked on a journey to reshape their future, and he was determined to see it through. The next few days were filled with meetings and discussions, each interaction deepening their understanding of the complexities surrounding the council's deliberations. They gathered in conference rooms, sharing their insights and collaborating with the newly formed committee. Delegates from diverse backgrounds brought their perspectives, creating a rich tapestry of ideas. Yet, amid the excitement, Marin couldn't shake the feeling of underlying tension. The stakes were high, and while many delegates were open to change, others clung fiercely to tradition. Each meeting felt like a balancing act, finding ways to engage those resistant to new ideas while simultaneously galvanizing those who were ready to embrace the lessons of the past. One evening, as they gathered to review the latest data, Marin sensed an air of urgency among his team. Malik broke the silence. "I've been thinking about our approach. We need to address the emotional component of this narrative. The delegates need to feel the weight of these lessons, not just understand them intellectually." Marin considered this. "You're right. While we've focused on the empirical data, we also need to humanize the experiences of the past. Stories can be powerful tools for connection." Griggs nodded in agreement. "We can highlight individual narratives from the ancient civilization, people who lived through the crises, who made choices that led to their downfall or survival. Personalizing the history might resonate more deeply." With renewed determination, they began crafting a presentation that interwove the data with stories, creating a narrative that balanced facts with human experience. They selected key moments from the records, emphasizing the choices made by individuals in pivotal moments. As they prepared, Marin felt a sense of purpose solidifying within him. They were not merely presenting information. They were offering a glimpse into the shared human experience that transcended time and space. The lessons of the past were not just warnings. They were an invitation to learn, to grow, and to evolve. The following week, they returned to the council, ready to present their refined narrative. As they stepped into the assembly hall, Marin felt the familiar mix of anticipation and anxiety. The delegates were present, their faces reflecting a blend of curiosity and skepticism. Marin took a deep breath, grounding himself in the moment. Esteemed members of the Council, we return today to share a narrative that not only reflects the past, but invites us to engage with the lessons embedded within it. We believe that understanding the human experiences behind the data can help us navigate our own challenges. Griggs stepped forward, projecting visuals that now included portraits of individuals from the ancient civilization. Each image told a story of resilience, fear, hope, and ultimately, choice. These were people just like us, Griggs continued. Their lives were shaped by circumstances beyond their control, yet their responses defined their legacy. We can learn from their decisions, their triumphs, and their failures. Malik's voice added depth as he introduced specific stories, tales of leaders who faced crises and the choices that either led to the survival of their communities or their demise. The room was silent as the delegates absorbed the human connection woven into the narrative. As the presentation unfolded, Marin felt the energy shift. The delegates were engaged, nodding along, their expressions a mix of empathy and contemplation. They were no longer distant observers, they were part of the narrative, grappling with the implications of the past on their present. When they concluded, the room erupted in discussion. Voices rose and fell, delegates exchanging thoughts and perspectives. Marin felt a surge of hope. They had ignited something powerful, a dialogue that transcended mere policy discussions. Finally, the senior member who had previously challenged their claims spoke again. You have presented compelling evidence. The stories you've shared resonate deeply. If we are to move forward, we must establish actionable plans that incorporate these lessons into our policies. Marin's heart raced. This was the moment they had worked toward. We propose creating a task force dedicated to exploring the integration of these lessons into our governance. We can develop strategies that promote adaptability and resilience, ensuring that we learn from the past as we shape our future. The room buzzed with conversation, delegates discussing the potential of such an initiative. Marin felt a sense of unity emerging, a shared commitment to embrace the lessons of history and forge a new path together. As the discussions continued, Marin exchanged glances with Malik and Griggs. They were no longer just a team of explorers. They had become catalysts for change. The narrative they had crafted had taken root, and the Council was beginning to embrace a new vision for their society. As the meeting concluded, Marin felt a wave of exhaustion wash over him. It had been a long journey, one filled with uncertainty and doubt, but also with hope and possibility. They had faced resistance, yet they had remained steadfast in their commitment to illuminate the path ahead. As they left the assembly hall, the corridors buzzed with renewed energy. Delegates were animatedly discussing the presentation, and Marin felt a sense of pride swell within him. They had become part of something larger than themselves, a movement towards understanding and growth. In the days that followed, the momentum continued to build. The task force was established, and Marin, Malik, and Griggs were invited to contribute their expertise. They worked alongside delegates from diverse backgrounds, pooling their knowledge and insights to develop a comprehensive strategy for integrating the lessons of the past into governance. Each meeting deepened their connection, and they shared stories and experiences, creating a rich tapestry of ideas. The atmosphere was one of collaboration and innovation, a collective commitment to fostering resilience in the face of uncertainty. Yet, amidst the progress, Marin remained aware of the fragility of their advancements. There were still factions within the Council resistant to change, voices that echoed with traditionalism and skepticism. He knew they must remain vigilant, constantly engaging with those who resisted the narrative. One afternoon, as they gathered for a meeting, Marin addressed the task force. We must continue to connect with those hesitant to embrace our vision. Change is a gradual process, and we cannot afford to alienate anyone in the Council. Malik nodded in agreement. We need to build bridges, not walls. Listening to their concerns can help us find common ground. As they crafted their strategies, Marin felt a renewed sense of purpose. They were not merely shaping policies, they were building a community. The lessons of the past were not only valuable for governance, but for fostering understanding among diverse perspectives. Days turned into weeks, and the task force made strides. They proposed initiatives that would not only reflect the lessons learned from the ancient civilization, but also promote dialogue and engagement across the council. Workshops were established, encouraging delegates to share their perspectives and experiences. Marin felt a sense of pride in their work. They were no longer just voices advocating for change. They had become facilitators of a new narrative. As the council's approach began to shift, he recognized that they were creating a framework that could withstand the challenges ahead. However, he also felt the tension beneath the surface, a reminder that change was never without its challenges. In meetings, he observed the subtle fractures between those embracing progress and those entrenched in tradition. Conversations would sometimes devolve into heated debates, a reminder of the complexities they navigated. One afternoon, as Marin left a particularly charged meeting, he found himself deep in thought. He was acutely aware of the stakes. Their society was at a crossroads, and the decisions made now would shape generations to come. The echoes of history were not merely warnings, they were lessons that could guide them toward a more sustainable existence. As he walked through the corridors, he caught sight of Malik and Griggs discussing the day's events. Marin joined them, his mind racing with possibilities. We need to strengthen our narratives, to create compelling stories that resonate with both sides. We can't ignore the fears of those resistant to change. Malik looked thoughtful. What if we engage them directly? We could organize panels where they can express their concerns, while also hearing from those who advocate for change. Dialogue could help bridge the divide. Griggs added, and we can showcase successful adaptations from other civilizations, demonstrating how change can lead to growth without sacrificing core values. Marin nodded, feeling the energy of their ideas. Yes, let's work on a proposal that includes these elements. If we can engage with those resistant to change while simultaneously showcasing the benefits, we might create a path toward collaboration. In the following weeks, they developed a series of community forums, inviting delegates from across the council to participate. The initiative was met with a mix of enthusiasm and skepticism, but Marin felt that they were laying the groundwork for meaningful dialogue. On the day of the first forum, the atmosphere buzzed with anticipation. Delegates gathered in a spacious hall, the seating arranged in a circular format to foster conversation. Marin stood at the front, looking out at the diverse assembly before him. He felt a sense of purpose surge within him. They were about to embark on a collective journey toward understanding. "Thank you all for being here today," Marin began, his voice steady. "We've gathered to share our experiences, our fears, and our hopes for the future. This is a space for dialogue, a chance to bridge the divides that have emerged as we navigate the complexities of change." The forum unfolded with a mix of perspectives. Some delegates expressed concerns about losing tradition, while others advocated for embracing new ideas. Marin felt a sense of balance emerging, the exchange of thoughts creating a rich tapestry of dialogue. As the discussions deepened, Marin recognized the humanity behind the differing viewpoints. Each perspective was rooted in personal experiences and fears. The tension that had once felt insurmountable began to dissolve as they shared their stories. During a particularly poignant moment, an elder delegate shared his own experience of change. "I've lived through many shifts in my lifetime, and each has been met with resistance. But I've learned that adaptation is not about forgetting our past. It's about honoring it while allowing ourselves to grow." The room fell silent, the weight of his words resonating deeply. Marin felt a collective shift, a realization that they were all navigating the same journey, albeit from different paths. As the forum concluded, Marin felt a renewed sense of hope. They had created a space for understanding, and though challenges remained, the dialogue fostered a sense of community. In the weeks that followed, the forums became a regular occurrence, each one enriching the narrative they were weaving together. The council began to transform, embracing the complexities of change while honoring the lessons of the past. Marin knew they were not yet finished. The journey was ongoing, and the path ahead would continue to present challenges. Yet, as he stood among his colleagues, he felt a deep sense of connection. They were part of something larger, a movement toward understanding and growth, rooted in the experiences of their predecessors. As the days turned into months, Marin reflected on the evolution of their society. The narrative they had cultivated together had begun to take hold, shaping policies and fostering collaboration. They had not only addressed the immediate challenges, but had laid the groundwork for a more resilient future. Yet, even in the face of progress, he remained mindful of the lessons of history. Each decision carried weight, and the echoes of the past would always guide their path. He understood that the complexity of their society was both a challenge and a strength, a reminder that navigating change required patience, empathy, and an unwavering commitment to dialogue. As he looked toward the horizon, Marin felt a profound sense of purpose. They were explorers in a landscape of ideas, forging connections and cultivating a future that honored the past while embracing the possibilities of what lay ahead. Together, they had become architects of a narrative that transcended time, a narrative rooted in the human experience, rich with complexity and hope. The Grand Assembly Hall hummed with energy as delegates gathered for what was deemed a pivotal meeting in their civilization's history. Marin stood at the entrance, feeling the weight of expectation settle on his shoulders. Today's agenda promised to be a watershed moment, one that could reshape their governance for generations to come. With a deep breath, he stepped inside. The space was designed for dialogue, with an arrangement of circular seating that encouraged open discussion. Each delegate found their place, their faces reflecting a mix of determination and skepticism. Marin's team, Malik and Griggs, joined him at the front, their expressions mirroring his own mix of anxiety and hope. As the senior counselor called the meeting to order, Marin's heart raced. He recalled the journey that had led them here, the arduous months of research, dialogue, and resistance. Their task force had worked tirelessly, weaving together lessons from the past with insights into their current challenges. They were not merely presenting data, they were igniting a conversation about their collective future. The counselor gestured for Marin to begin. Marin rose, feeling the gravity of the moment envelop him. "Thank you for gathering today. We stand at a crossroads, a point in our history where the decisions we make will echo through time. Our discussions will not just inform policy, they will shape our identity as a civilization." He paused, scanning the room, meeting the gazes of delegates representing various factions. Each one carried their own narratives, histories, and hopes. We have explored the stories of our ancestors, examining the triumphs and failures that have led us here. Today, we must ask ourselves, what do we wish to learn from them? What path will we choose as we move forward? Malik stepped forward, presenting a visual timeline that illustrated the cycles of rise and fall in their society. This timeline highlights critical moments in our history. Each event is a reminder of the consequences of our choices. We can choose to learn from our predecessors, adapting their lessons to fit our current circumstances. Griggs added, "Today's discussion is not just about acknowledging the past. It is about recognizing our agency in shaping the future. We must confront the challenges ahead with courage, adaptability, and a commitment to collaboration." As they spoke, the hall remained charged with anticipation. The atmosphere was thick with the potential for change. Some delegates nodded in agreement, while others remained visibly skeptical, their arms crossed, eyes narrowed. Marin felt a swell of determination. "We are not here to impose a single narrative or dictate policy. We are here to foster dialogue, to create a space where diverse perspectives can converge. The strength of our society lies in our ability to engage with one another, to listen, and to learn." After their presentation, the floor opened for discussion. Delegates raised their hands, and voices filled the room, each contributing to the dialogue with varying degrees of enthusiasm. Some advocated for preserving traditional governance structures, while others passionately supported the need for reform. A delegate from the northern region spoke first. We must not forget the foundations of our governance. Change is necessary, yes, but we risk losing what makes us who we are. Our traditions provide stability. Another voice chimed in from the opposite side. Stability without adaptability is a recipe for stagnation. We have witnessed the consequences of clinging too tightly to the past. Our ancestors' failure to adapt led to their decline. We must break that cycle. As voices rose and fell, Marin listened intently, noting the nuances of each argument. He understood the fears driving the traditionalists. Their desire to protect what they knew was rooted in a need for security. But he also recognized the urgency expressed by those advocating for change. The discussion spiraled into passionate exchanges, with some delegates interrupting each other in their eagerness to voice their opinions. Marin observed the interplay of ideas, the ebb and flow of dialogue that revealed the complexities of their society. This was not merely a debate, it was a tapestry of human experience, woven together by shared histories, fears, and aspirations. After several hours of vigorous discussion, the counselor called for a break. Delegates dispersed into smaller groups, continuing their conversations in more intimate settings. Marin, Malik, and Griggs gathered in a corner, processing the intensity of the discussions. "I didn't expect such strong emotions," Malik remarked, his brow furrowed. "People are deeply invested in this." Griggs nodded, adjusting his glasses. "It's a testament to the stakes involved. This is about more than policy, it's about identity. We must navigate these emotions carefully." Marin contemplated their words. "We've opened the door to dialogue, but we need to ensure it doesn't close. The next step is crucial. We must foster connections among those who disagree, create a bridge between factions." As they strategized, a familiar face approached, a delegate from a neighboring council known for her commitment to bridging divides. "I overheard your discussions," she said, a thoughtful expression on her face. "You're on the right track, but you'll need to address the emotional aspects directly. People need to feel heard, not just understood." Marin felt a sense of kinship with her perspective. "We aim to create spaces for dialogue. What would you suggest?" "Host forums where people can share their stories, real, personal experiences that illustrate the impact of policies on their lives. When delegates connect on a human level, it will change the nature of the conversation. It's about empathy and understanding." Marin considered her advice, envisioning how personal narratives could breathe life into their discussions. "That could be powerful. We can organize storytelling sessions where delegates share their experiences, emphasizing the human side of our policies." The delegate nodded enthusiastically. "Exactly. It will take time, but fostering genuine connections will help alleviate fears and bridge the divides that exist." Inspired by the conversation, Marin and his team began planning the storytelling sessions, eager to create an environment that prioritized human experience. They reached out to delegates from all factions, inviting them to participate. As the sessions unfolded over the following weeks, a transformative energy emerged. Delegates shared their personal stories, tales of struggle, resilience, and triumph. Each narrative revealed the intricate threads that bound them together, showcasing the common humanity underlying their differences. In one session, an elder delegate recounted his experience of losing family during a period of turmoil, his voice steady yet filled with emotion. "We were torn apart by fear, by mistrust. But in the end, it was our connection to one another that helped us heal. We must remember that, no matter our disagreements, we are all part of the same fabric." The room fell silent, the weight of his words resonating deeply. Marin felt the collective realization wash over the audience. They were no longer just representatives of opposing factions. They were individuals shaped by shared experiences, navigating the same challenges. As the sessions continued, the atmosphere shifted. Delegates began to engage with one another more openly, asking questions, listening actively, and expressing empathy. The storytelling became a catalyst for understanding, helping to dissolve barriers that had once seemed insurmountable. Yet, even amid this progress, Marin remained aware of the undercurrents of tension. Some factions were slower to embrace the changes, clinging to their established beliefs with stubbornness. He understood that transformation was a gradual process, requiring patience and perseverance. As the weeks turned into months, the council convened once again, this time with a renewed sense of purpose. The storytelling sessions had transformed the dialogue, allowing them to approach policy discussions with greater empathy and understanding. Marin stood at the forefront once more, aware of the magnitude of the moment. We have gathered here today not just as representatives of our respective factions, but as individuals who have shared stories, fears, and hopes. We are on a journey to reshape our future, and our choices must reflect the values we hold dear. Malik joined him, presenting the findings from their storytelling sessions. We have compiled insights from our discussions, identifying common themes that resonate across our narratives. The desire for security, for community, and for a future that honors our past has emerged as a unifying thread. Griggs emphasized, as we move forward, we must integrate these insights into our governance. Our policies should reflect the human experiences shared in these stories. We can create a framework that promotes collaboration while honoring the diverse perspectives that make our society vibrant. The delegates listened intently, nodding in agreement. One delegate from the traditionalist faction spoke up. "I have seen the power of these stories. They remind us of our shared humanity and the need for compassion in our policies. I propose we create a committee dedicated to ensuring that our governance reflects these values." Marin felt a rush of optimism. This was the breakthrough they had been hoping for, a willingness to embrace change while honoring tradition. As discussions continued, they laid the groundwork for a committee that would work to integrate the insights from their storytelling sessions into policy development. The energy in the hall shifted from skepticism to collaboration, a shared understanding emerging among delegates. They were beginning to see themselves not as adversaries, but as co-creators of their future. In the days that followed, the committee was formed, and the delegates rolled up their sleeves, eager to get to work. They examined existing policies, assessing how they could be adapted to reflect the lessons learned from their shared narratives. Marin felt a sense of fulfillment in the air, the tangible momentum of change propelling them forward. Yet he remained aware of the challenges ahead. The journey was far from over. They had only begun to scratch the surface of transformation. As the committee met regularly, they faced questions that challenged their convictions. Some delegates pushed back against changes, fearing they would lead to instability. Others argued for a more radical approach, wanting to overhaul systems that had long governed their society. Amid these discussions, Marin kept returning to the stories that had brought them together. They were a reminder of why they were here, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. He found himself often reflecting on the elder delegates' words about healing through connection. In the midst of heated debates, he spoke up. "Let's not lose sight of the human element in our discussions. Each decision we make carries weight and impacts lives. Our policies must reflect the values we've unearthed together." Slowly, the committee found its rhythm, weaving together diverse perspectives into a cohesive vision. They began drafting proposals that embraced flexibility and adaptability while grounding themselves in the principles of empathy and understanding. As the proposals took shape, Marin felt the excitement in the air. They were creating something new, an approach to governance that honored the past while looking toward the future. He envisioned a society that was not only resilient but also vibrant and inclusive. Finally, after months of deliberation, the committee was ready to present their proposals to the council. Marin stood once more before his peers, feeling the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. Today, we stand united, ready to share a vision for our future, a vision shaped by the stories we have shared and the connections we have forged. Our proposals reflect a commitment to empathy, collaboration, and the resilience of our community. As he detailed the proposals, he could see the shift in the room. Delegates listened attentively, nodding in agreement as the ideas resonated. The vision was no longer just a collection of policies. It was a narrative that wove together their shared humanity. The council voted overwhelmingly in favor of the proposals, a resounding affirmation of their journey. As applause filled the hall, Marin felt a swell of pride. They had transformed not just their governance, but the very fabric of their society. In the weeks that followed, the implementation of the new policies began. Marin watched as the committee's vision came to life, as communities engaged in discussions about their shared future. The storytelling sessions continued, now embedded in the fabric of their governance, creating a culture of dialogue that would endure. Marin understood that while they had made significant strides, the journey was ongoing. Change was a continuous process, requiring vigilance, adaptability, and commitment. He felt a deep sense of purpose in guiding this evolution, recognizing the complexities that lay ahead. As he looked toward the horizon, Marin embraced the weight of responsibility that came with leadership. They were navigating uncharted waters, forging a path toward a future that honored their past while embracing the potential of what lay ahead. Together, they had become architects of a narrative rich with complexity and hope, a story rooted in the human experience, where every voice mattered, and every story was a thread in the fabric of their collective identity. The assembly hall buzzed with the energy of discussion, a cacophony of voices that rose and fell like the tide. Delegates from various factions of the Galactic Council filled the space, their expressions reflecting a mix of determination, apprehension, and curiosity. Marin stood near the entrance, absorbing the scene. He could sense the weight of expectation hanging in the air, an undercurrent of hope intermingled with fear. Today marked a significant turning point, a step toward understanding that might shift the trajectory of their civilization. As he stepped forward, Marin felt the eyes of the council upon him. The circular seating arrangement encouraged openness, yet it also amplified the intensity of scrutiny. He stood before the council, flanked by Malik and Griggs, their presence a steadying force. This was not merely another meeting. It was the culmination of their efforts over the past several months, efforts to bridge divides, to cultivate dialogue, and to foster a sense of shared purpose among delegates who had long viewed one another with skepticism. The senior counselor gestured for silence, her gaze sweeping across the room. "Thank you for gathering today. We stand at a critical juncture, where the decisions we make will reverberate through our society for generations to come. Today, we will hear from the task force regarding the proposals that seek to reshape our governance." Marin took a deep breath, feeling the gravity of the moment settle on his shoulders. He had prepared extensively for this presentation, yet no amount of preparation could fully encapsulate the emotions swirling in the hall. "Esteemed delegates," he began, his voice steady. "Today, we aim to discuss not just policies, but the very essence of our identity as a civilization. We must ask ourselves, what do we want our legacy to be?" As he spoke, he observed the reactions in the room. Some delegates nodded in agreement, while others wore expressions of skepticism. He pressed on, determined to convey the importance of their task. "We have immersed ourselves in the stories of our ancestors, learning from their triumphs and failures. These lessons are not mere history, they are a guide to our future." Malik stepped forward, presenting a visual timeline that depicted the rise and fall of their society. This timeline illustrates our historical cycles. It is a reminder that our choices today shape our tomorrow. We stand at a crossroads, faced with the opportunity to learn from the past and redefine our path. Griggs joined in, his voice calm yet firm. "It is essential that we do not lose sight of the human element in our discussions. Policies are not abstract concepts, they affect real lives. Our decisions must be rooted in empathy and understanding." The hall hummed with energy, delegates engaging in hushed conversations, grappling with the implications of their words. Marin sensed the tension in the room, a complex interplay of fear and hope. Some factions resisted change, clinging to established norms, while others pressed for reform, eager to embrace a new direction. As the discussion progressed, voices rose and fell, a blend of passionate arguments and measured reasoning. A delegate from the southern region stood, her brow furrowed. "We cannot forget the foundations of our governance. Stability is essential. If we stray too far from our traditions, we risk losing our identity." Another voice, firm and clear, countered from the opposite side. "But stability without progress is stagnation. Our history is replete with examples of societies that clung too tightly to the past and ultimately faltered. We must break that cycle. Marin watched the exchange, recognizing the weight of each perspective. The debate illuminated the complexities of their situation. This was not merely a clash of ideas, it was a manifestation of deeply held beliefs and fears. He felt a deep responsibility to navigate these waters with care, to find common ground amidst the divergence. As the hours stretched on, the counselor called for a brief recess. Delegates filtered into smaller groups, continuing discussions in hushed tones. Marin gathered with Malik and Griggs, processing the intensity of the day. Griggs adjusted his glasses, deep in thought. Fear often accompanies change. We need to find ways to address those concerns without dismissing them. Marin nodded, considering their words. We need to create spaces for dialogue, where individuals can voice their fears and aspirations. Perhaps we can facilitate storytelling sessions, allowing delegates to share their experiences and the impact of policies on their lives. Malik's eyes lit up. That could be powerful. Personal stories could humanize our discussions and foster empathy. As they fleshed out the details, a familiar face approached, a delegate known for her commitment to community engagement. I couldn't help but overhear, she said, a thoughtful expression on her face. Storytelling is an excellent idea. People need to connect on a personal level. When they see their experiences reflected in the narratives of others, it creates a bond. Exactly, Marin replied, feeling a surge of hope. We want to facilitate a culture of openness, where everyone feels heard. With renewed determination, Marin and his team set to work, organizing storytelling sessions that invited delegates from all factions to share their experiences. The following weeks were filled with a sense of purpose as they reached out to various delegates, inviting them to participate. As the storytelling sessions commenced, a remarkable transformation began to unfold. Delegates shared personal tales, stories of struggle, resilience, and triumph. Each narrative added depth to the discussions, weaving together the intricate fabric of their collective experience. In one session, an elder delegate recounted the hardships of a past conflict, his voice steady yet imbued with emotion. We lost so much during those days, but we also learned the power of unity. It was through our connections that we found the strength to rebuild. Marin could see the impact of his words. The room fell silent, delegates reflecting on the shared history and the lessons embedded within. In that moment, the gulf between opposing factions began to narrow, replaced by a collective sense of humanity. As the sessions continued, the atmosphere shifted. Delegates began to engage more openly, asking questions, expressing curiosity rather than defensiveness. They started to see one another not as adversaries, but as individuals shaped by similar experiences. Yet, even as progress unfolded, Marin remained aware of the challenges ahead. Not all delegates embraced the change. Some clung stubbornly to their positions, fearing the erosion of their values. He understood that true transformation required patience and ongoing dialogue. As the weeks turned into months, the council convened again, this time with a renewed sense of purpose. The storytelling sessions had woven a thread of connection that bound them together, creating a foundation for more meaningful discussions. Marin stood at the forefront once more, aware of the significance of this moment. Today, we gather not merely as representatives of factions, but as individuals who have shared stories and experiences. Our path forward must be shaped by the lessons we've learned together. Malik presented findings from the storytelling sessions, highlighting common themes that emerged from their narratives. We have identified a desire for security, community, and a future that honors our past. These themes unite us across differences. Griggs emphasized, as we draft policies, we must integrate these insights, ensuring they reflect the human experiences shared in these stories. Our governance should prioritize collaboration while respecting the diversity that enriches our society. The delegates listened intently, nodding as the ideas resonated. The discussions felt more collaborative, less adversarial. They were beginning to envision a shared future. One delegate from the traditionalist faction spoke up. "I have seen the power of these stories. They remind us of our shared humanity. I propose we create a committee dedicated to ensuring that our governance reflects these values." Marin felt a rush of relief and excitement. This was the breakthrough they had hoped for, a willingness to embrace change while honoring tradition. The discussions took shape, laying the groundwork for a committee that would work to incorporate the lessons learned from the storytelling sessions into policy development. As the committee formed, delegates rolled up their sleeves, eager to get to work. They examined existing policies, assessing how they could adapt them to reflect the insights gained from their shared narratives. Marin felt fulfilled watching the committee's progress. They were creating a framework that honored the past while looking toward the future, embodying the very essence of their discussions. The atmosphere brimmed with the promise of collaboration, of a society evolving together. Yet, amidst the excitement, Marin knew the road ahead would not be without obstacles. The balance between tradition and progress required constant vigilance. As they navigated these complexities, he reminded himself of the stories that had brought them together. They were a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. The committee convened regularly, wrestling with difficult questions and navigating differing opinions. Some delegates pushed back against proposed changes, fearing the consequences of shifting established norms. Others argued for more radical approaches, seeking to overhaul systems that had governed their society for generations. In the midst of these discussions, Marin often reiterated the importance of the human element. "Let us not lose sight of the lives impacted by our decisions. Our policies must reflect the values we've unearthed through our shared narratives." Slowly, the committee found its footing, weaving together diverse perspectives into a cohesive vision. They began drafting proposals that embraced adaptability while remaining grounded in the principles of empathy and understanding. They were crafting a new approach to governance, one that honored the past while looking toward a brighter future. He envisioned a society that was not only resilient but also vibrant and inclusive. Finally, after months of deliberation, the committee was ready to present their proposals to the council. The atmosphere in the hall was electric as delegates took their seats, anticipation hanging in the air. Marin stood once more before his peers, feeling the weight of responsibility. "Today, we stand united, ready to share a vision for our future, a vision shaped by the stories we have shared and the connections we have forged. Our proposals reflect a commitment to empathy, collaboration, and the resilience of our community." As he detailed the proposals, he could see a shift in the room. Delegates listened attentively, nodding in agreement as the ideas resonated. The vision was no longer just a collection of policies. It was a narrative that wove together their shared humanity. The council voted overwhelmingly in favor of the proposals, a resounding affirmation of their journey. As applause filled the hall, Marin felt a swell of pride. They had transformed not just their governance, but the very fabric of their society. In the weeks that followed, the implementation of the new policies began. Marin watched as the committee's vision came to life, as communities engaged in discussions about their shared future. The storytelling sessions continued, now embedded in the fabric of their governance, creating a culture of dialogue that would endure. Marin understood that while they had made significant strides, the journey was ongoing. Change was a continuous process, requiring vigilance, adaptability, and commitment. He felt a deep sense of purpose in guiding this evolution, recognizing the complexities that lay ahead. As he looked toward the horizon, Marin embraced the weight of responsibility that came with leadership. They were navigating uncharted waters, forging a path toward a future that honored their past while embracing the potential of what lay ahead. Together, they had become architects of a narrative rich with complexity and hope, a story rooted in the human experience, where every voice mattered, and every story was a thread in the fabric of their collective identity.